Chapter 830. This was the only chance of survival that he could think of. Escape? Under the suppression of the Grade 5 formation, he was only left with half of his strength. In terms of combat power, he was probably no match for an ordinary peak primordial soul realm expert. His speed was also reduced to the extreme, making it impossible for him to escape. Beg for mercy? Threaten and bribe? He knew that it would be useless just by looking at the fate of his followers. Baiziue had even been able to kill the peerlessly beautiful palace master of the closed moon immortal palace, the fox charm fairy, who had maintained her pure Een body to this day. Baiziue did not think that he would be an exception. Therefore, he thought of this seemingly laughable method that was the only way for him to survive. What a laughable idea! But so what if I do as you wish? Ziyue naturally knew what the other party was thinking. However, his strength was shocking and he had reached the supreme realm in all aspects. He did not care about this at all. Furthermore, if he wanted to subdue the killing intent, it would be difficult for him to advance by relying on external forces such as the formation. Therefore, with a single thought, the power of the array retreated, and the void returned to its calm state. The suppression that had been exerting on the fifth five venerable also dissipated. As his aura rose, he immediately reached his peak state. Good. No matter how strong you are, I have to admit that your courage is unparalleled and admirable. The fifth five venerable was overjoyed and he praised Lin Fan. His face was unprecedentedly serious. To him, this was a battle of life and death. If he won, then everyone would be happy, and he would be able to escape. But if he lost, then he would really die, and his Tao would vanish. Everything would come to an end. Almost immediately, he raised his aura to the maximum and unleashed his full combat power. He used all kinds of enhancement techniques on his body, and swallowed the decaying energy life-death elixir. The decaying energy life-death elixir was a demonic elixir that damaged the body and the primordial soul. He had obtained it by chance in the ancient battlefield. Once he swallowed it, his strength would increase tremendously. At the very least, it would increase the strength of his attacks and allow him to overcome the obstacles and reach the supreme realm. In other words, this demonic pill could guarantee that his battle prowess would reach the Lamita realm, and he would be able to fight against Lamiters. Of course, the price he paid was extremely great as well. His body had been corroded, and his soul core had been damaged. He would at least need over 100 years of recuperation before he could recover to his peak combat strength. However, to him, 100 years was nothing compared to life and death. He still had nearly 2,000 years of lifespan left. Although 100 years was a long time, he could afford it. Are you ready? Ziyue stood in the void and watched as the other party unleashed all his means and raised his strength to the maximum. He looked like he was waiting for the right moment. Come on, I really want to test your strength, fellow Taoist. As the fifth venerable spoke, a long sword immediately slashed at Ziyue with an unstoppable force. Ziyue didn't answer. He just looked at the long sword that was sweeping towards him indifferently. The long sword was filled with hurricanes and water. It was also surrounded by flames and accompanied by the Metal Emperor. It was a combination of metal, water, fire, earth, and wind. Not only was it a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure, but it also had spirituality and had the potential to become a spiritual treasure. Together with the fifth venerable's overwhelming strength, the power of the heavens, and the gathering of Tao laws, the space was pressured by the sword and a long gap was formed. It was the sign of the space collapsing after the formation was broken. The attack had reached the Lamita realm. In the blink of an eye, the sword shadow approached and was about to land on Ziyue's body. Be careful. Even though Fu Yunfan and the others were extremely confident in Ziyue, they couldn't help but feel nervous at this moment. I've used all my strength in this attack. It's so powerful that it has reached the limit of what I can do. I can also feel that the restriction of this attack has reached the Lamita realm. The Lamita realm, this is the power of the Lamita realm. Only by using this attack can I understand how powerful and terrifying the power of the Lamita realm is. I can truly understand the mysteries behind it. The fifth venerable was overjoyed and intoxicated. He even felt that his mind had been touched. It was as if he had reached the Lamita realm with this attack. He had broken through the bottleneck that had been troubling him. He couldn't help but feel that there was an inexplicable change in his every move. I've broken through? My skills have improved and reached a new level? He was stunned and extremely excited. Long ago, he was already one of the strongest people below the Lamita realm. He was very powerful and was only one step away from the Lamita realm. Now that his skills had improved and his strength had improved, it immediately showed that his strength had officially advanced and reached the Lamita realm. Originally, I needed the help of the decaying energy samsara pill to unleash the Lamita realm attack. Now that I've used all my strength in this life and death situation, I've finally understood the essence of power and truly advanced to the Lamita realm. The fifth venerable had desired the power of the Lamita realm for far too long. Back then, he had disregarded everything and stepped into the ancient barren battlefield in hopes of finding an opportunity to advance further. Over 100 years had passed. Although he had gained a lot and obtained countless treasures, his true strength had stagnated and had not improved. At this time, he had finally taken that step and become the first of the 3 top primordial soul realm experts in the ancient barren region to enter the Lamita realm. He was one of the few Lamiters in the entire astral boundary. He immediately felt satisfied, and a strong sense of unwillingness and murderous intent surged in his heart. Previously, he knew that he was slightly weaker and could not break free from the power of the formation. He could only fight back passively. That was why he had tried to provoke Ziyue into fighting him head-on. Now that his strength had improved and he had truly stepped into the Lamita realm, he believed that even if his strength was still restricted within the formation, he already had the strength to break free of the formation and escape. On the other hand, he saw that Taoist Northming had not moved even after his sword had landed. He could not help but smile coldly. It seems that I have overestimated him. Taoist Northming is at most in the intermediate primordial soul realm. Even if he has some special techniques, he is still not a true top expert. Now that my attack is approaching, he hasn't reacted at all. Clearly, he has been stunned by the power contained in my attack and the surging power of the laws of Wei within it. He guessed and attacked even more mercilessly. Be careful! Fu Yunfan shouted from the side. He was extremely nervous. Even though he believed that Ziyue's strength was enough to deal with everything, after sensing the power of the sword, he was still worried. That's it. You prepared with all your strength and used all your technique. Is that all you have? Suddenly Ziyue sighed. He seemed to be a little disappointed. This attack had indeed reached the Lamita realm. However, there was also a huge difference between the Lamita realm and the Lamita realm. Although the attack power of both parties could only reach this level under the restrictions of heaven and earth, such restrictions could not erase the power of a cultivator. Instead, it would maintain the power of the Lamita realm until the power dissipated. In other words, the longer the power of the Lamita realm was maintained, the more terrifying the power of the cultivator's attack would be. Immediately after, a sword light flashed in the void and a flying sword shot out. It was as fast as lightning and was extremely fast. Boom! It collided with the long sword of the fifth five supremacy and froze for a moment. After a breath, the power in the long sword of the fifth five supremacy was completely neutralized. However, Ziyue's attack still contained a terrifying and powerful force. Not only did it destroy the fifth five supremacy's flying sword, but it also did not reduce its power and rushed to the front of the fifth five supremacy. What? How is this possible? No, the flying sword pierced through him without any resistance. It even destroyed his primordial soul will. Until he died, his eyes were still filled with disbelief. He had used the energy-rotting samsara elixir and used it to unleash an attack of the Lamita realm. He had even achieved a breakthrough in his skills and officially entered the Lamita realm. However, he had died before he could shine in the immortal spell world. However, it was normal for Bai Ziyue to do so. His power had already reached the Lamita realm when he had just ascended to the primordial soul realm. Now that he had reached the middle stage of the primordial soul realm, his power could not be further enhanced because of the restrictions of heaven and earth and the restrictions of the great Tao. However, the increase in his strength naturally caused the energy contained in his attacks to become even more frightening. The power of his attacks had become even more turbulent. Attacks of the same Lamita level would naturally last longer, and after neutralizing the opponent's attack, he would still have enough energy left to kill his opponent. So fast? Just one attack? The fifth five supremacy is dead? Is this the true power of the Dark North sect leader? Fu Yunfan and the others looked at the figure of the fifth five supremacy, whose aura had completely disappeared. They were extremely shocked. Even though they had tried their best to overestimate Ziyue's power, they did not expect that Ziyue's power would be so much higher than the fifth five supremacies. Ziyue casually waved his hand and collected all the spoils of war from the cultivators. These are the puppets that you need. 7 puppets, none of them are missing. Although they are slightly damaged, they are still in good condition. As for this formation, I have already refined it, so I can't give it to you. However, the good thing is that the fifth five supremacy and the others left behind many spoils of war. There are various primordial soul treasures, heavenly treasures, and special treasures. You can choose as much as you want. Take it as my compensation for obtaining this formation and the numinous treasures. Ziyue used his divine consciousness and quickly went through the spoils of war. Soon, he took out the few golden stone puppets that the fifth five supremacy and the others had subdued. Then, he took out all the treasures that he had no use for but were equally valuable for them to choose from. These treasures were also very valuable. They even included the fifth five supremacy's natal magic treasure, the supreme grade primordial soul treasure long sword that had developed spirituality. In terms of supreme grade spirit stones, all the treasures were worth at least 3 million supreme grade spirit stones. It was almost the same value as 3 inferior grade numinous treasures. Isn't this too much? We only led the way. We didn't do much at all. That's right. If it wasn't for Dark North sect leader, not only would we have returned empty-handed, we might even have died on the spot because of the fifth five supremacy. In fact, just the group of 2-headed tyrannosauruses from before was enough to make us stop. The few of them looked at the treasures with sparkling eyes. However, they were hesitant and did not dare to choose. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have obtained these. This is what you deserve. Ziyue waved his hand and scattered the treasures in the void for the few of them to choose from. Then, he flew up. Although he had given the 3 of them many treasures worth 3 million supreme-grade spirit stones, in fact, his gains were even more valuable. Putting everything else aside, just the collection of the 7 primordial soul realm experts. Although he had given the 3 of them many treasures of shocking value, the remaining treasures were even more valuable. Not to mention the many inheritances, Tao techniques, and secret techniques, just the many special treasures and talismans that could only be left in the ancient battlefield were already extremely valuable. They were also worth no less than 3 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Not to mention Ziyue's other great gain. This entire array, more than 70,000 array bases, meant more than 70,000 golden core treasures. In addition, there were many array bases that had reached the primordial soul realm. It was a huge fortune. In addition, there was the Jade Rui that was the eye of the array. This Jade Rui was a middle-grade numinous treasure, and was worth 10 times more than an ordinary inferior-grade numinous treasure. Just this point alone was enough to satisfy Ziyue. In fact, when the 70,000 golden core treasures, primordial soul realm treasures, and the numinous treasure that was the eye of the array were combined into an array, its value would be even higher. It would not be inferior to a superior grade numinous treasure. A superior grade numinous treasure was worth 100 or 1,000 times more than an inferior grade numinous treasure. Because I have refined the entire array, I can take it away directly. If they were spread out, the value of this formation would be reduced. If I carry the entire array with me, it would be of limited help to me in a frontal attack. However, if I use it at a critical moment, it would be very useful. It would not be inferior to a superior grade numinous treasure. Ziyue hesitated for a moment and then quickly made a decision. A middle grade numinous treasure would not be of much help to Ziyue. His strength mostly came from his own body, and he rarely relied on external help. Not only was his cultivation technique special, but the Tao techniques that he had learned were also extraordinary. Furthermore, he had raised all of them to the peak of perfection. Naturally, he was very powerful and did not need the help of a numinous treasure. However, in terms of overall strength, a large array that was comparable to a superior grade numinous treasure was naturally more powerful and could be of greater use. Chapter 831. Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated. With a thought, he hurriedly controlled the entire formation and began to shrink. More than 70,000 golden core treasures and primordial soul treasures quickly shrank under the control of the middle-grade spiritual jade rui at the center of the formation. Soon, they turned into an oval ball. The center of the ball was where the middle-grade spiritual treasure, the jade rui, was. As the formation was put away by Ziyue, the environment of this world also changed and returned to its original appearance. Even the relatively intact palace was completely exposed in front of everyone. However, there were no more treasures in the palace and naturally, it was not valued by many. The formation can be carried by me at all times. In fact, it could even be used during a great battle to help me deal with my enemies. It could be considered one of my trump cards. The only problem is that it will be more difficult to maintain the normal operation of the formation without the supply of the spirit vein here. I will need to rely on my own strength or I will need to invest a large amount of spirit stones. Bai Ziyue pondered for a moment, but he did not mind. Compared to the usefulness it could play in battle, the consumption of energy was nothing. He had a lot of spirit stones with him. Not only did he have the collection of the many enemies he had killed before, but he also had the storage of real Venerate Sun Miao and the fifth Venerable. In total, he had more than 2 million supreme-grade spirit stones. It was enough to support him for at least 2 long battles. In addition to the spirit stones and materials, the amount of spirit energy I have this time has also increased by a lot, reaching 600 million. Although it is still not enough for me to deduce the heaven-shocking 3 rod strikes, and it is also not enough for me to make another breakthrough in the realm of immortal techniques to reach the late stage of the primordial soul realm, it has greatly increased my confidence. Ziyue glanced at the attribute panel again, and was more confident in his previous plan. Unfortunately, the fifth Venerable was still a little weak. Although it made me regain my murderous intent, it was killed by me with a single blow. In the end, it was not enough for me to completely subdue it and master the murderous intent. In that case, the heaven-breaking Tao technique that I was stuck at the final hurdle was created by me before I could completely cross over to the past. Soon after, Ziyue thought of the heaven-breaking Tao technique that he was going to create in order to break the seal of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao. The Tao art he had derived had already reached the pinnacle. He was only a step away from completing it. However, this kick had troubled him for many months. This time, after the killing heart had been awakened, there was a chance for it to take shape. However, the strength of the fifth Reverend and the others were not a threat to him at all. Naturally, he could not completely control the killing heart. Without mastering the killing intent, his thoughts could not be penetrated. Naturally, the heaven-breaking Tao technique could not take form. However, now that my murderous heart has been awakened, my thoughts have also changed. I believe that it won't be long before I can completely subdue my murderous heart and create a heaven-breaking Tao technique. Ziyue was actually very confident. This kind of change, that was completely based on one's heart, was naturally easier to comprehend when forced by a powerhouse. However, even if there were no powerhouses fighting, as long as he was given some time to think carefully, he could still cleanse his soul and transform it. In addition, it was worth mentioning that because of this trip to the ancient battlefield, Ziyue had also obtained the body cultivator's secret technique, the heaven-shocking staff technique, which made up for his shortcoming of cultivating both spirit and body. Naturally, there was a slight flaw in the prototype of the heaven-breaking Tao technique that he had originally created. He also planned to adjust and fix this point in the next period of time. Dark North sect leader, we have chosen. At this time, Fu Yunfan and the others also came over with a look of joy. Obviously, they were very satisfied with this harvest. Thinking about it, it made sense. The treasures that were worth 3 million top-grade spirit stones were equivalent to each of them getting a treasure that was equivalent to an inferior-grade spirit treasure. The three of them were indeed very satisfied. It should be known that their strength was not considered the top among the primordial soul realm cultivators. Their total wealth was only a few 100,000 top-grade spirit stones. The harvest that Ziyue gave them was far beyond their expectations. As long as you are satisfied. Ziyue nodded and said casually. By the way, what are your plans next, Dark North sect leader? Fei Peng looked at the surroundings and could not help but ask. The other two were also looking forward to it. They had already tasted the sweetness of the harvest and naturally hoped to continue following Ziyue. Perhaps they would be able to gain even more. I plan to explore the land of the deceased immortals, Ziyue said as he looked at the land of the deceased immortals in the distance. The clouds were strange, and the primordial chi was constantly fluctuating. Hearing this, the expressions of the few people changed. The ancient battlefield was divided into three major areas: the outer area, the central area, and the land of the deceased immortals. The outer area was very dangerous for Golden Core realm cultivators to enter, and the chances of them dying were very high. The central area was no longer a place where Golden Core realm cultivators could enter. Once they entered, they would almost certainly die. Even primordial soul realm cultivators had to be careful when they entered, because if they were not careful, they would not be able to escape death. If they were lucky, they would be lured into some special formations and trapped there for hundreds of years. Generally speaking, only those in the middle and later stages of the primordial soul realm, or even those at the peak of the primordial soul realm, had the confidence to survive there. However, they were also very vigilant and had to be on guard against possible dangers. As for the central land of the deceased immortals, it was considered a great danger zone for countless primordial soul realm cultivators. Just the violent fluctuation of spiritual energy alone was enough to make them feel immense pressure, and their strength was greatly affected. Not to mention, there were also countless spatial tears, powerful ultimate formations, killing formations. Most importantly, there was the celestial baleful chi within. That was a terrifying existence that even supreme realm cultivators could not do anything about once they were tainted by it. Moreover, it was everywhere and impossible to guard against. Therefore, even though almost all the cultivators knew that there must be many treasures in the land of the deceased immortals, and even the legendary treasure that caused the immortals to descend and a great war to break out, not many were willing to enter. Fu Yunfan and the others naturally did not think that they were qualified to explore the land of the deceased immortals with their strength. Even with Ziyue's protection, that place was too dangerous. Once they were tainted by the divine evil chi, it would affect their cultivation. Therefore, when they heard this, they all shrunk their necks and did not dare to speak. Among them, Fu Yunfan said, sect leader, the land of the deceased immortals is too dangerous. If there is nothing important, I advise you not to enter rashly. That's right. It is said that even Supreme Realm cultivators are wary of the land of the deceased immortals. Thousands of years ago, the Supreme Realm cultivator Taoist Ji Xing was tainted by too much divine evil qi, and his great Tao was destroyed. Not only did he have no hope of advancing to the separating divinity stage, but his immortal spell cultivation was also affected and kept regressing. He originally had 2,000 years of lifespan, but in the end, he only lived for 700 years. I heard that when he died, his immortal spell cultivation was only at the early stage of the primordial soul realm. He was almost a cripple. Fei Peng could not help but advise. The various things about the land of the deceased immortals made them extremely wary. Although Ziyue's strength was admirable, it was not impossible for him to encounter a calamity. Senior Darknorth, you should know that I am from the Fox Demon royal family. Before coming to this ancient battlefield, I have read a lot of relevant information. Among them, there was a candied fruit that recorded information about the land of the deceased immortals. It mentioned that the land of the deceased immortals had true immortals and immortal corpses. At that time, I specifically asked our Fox Demon royal family's clan leader about this. At that time, she said that there were true immortals in the land of the deceased immortals. Moreover, the true immortals who died back then seemed to have undergone special changes. Their corpses were reborn with intelligence. The divine evil qi was actually the aura emitted by the immortal corpses when they breathed. Back then, the Supreme Realm cultivator Taoist Yi Xing probably encountered the immortal corpses, which led to his misfortune and destroyed his cultivation. Su Yu did not say anything to persuade him. He only revealed what he knew about the land of the deceased immortals. However, the information contained in his words was even more intimidating. True immortals, immortal corpses. No matter what it was not something that anyone wanted to encounter. Thank you for your kind intentions. However, I have a reason that I must go. When Ziyue heard that, he was actually a little shocked. However, after pondering for a while, he still decided to go. The ancient battlefield's location was too crucial. It happened to be where the ancient desolate region's Dragon Vein ancestral court was located. It was also where the spirit veins were severed. If he wanted to revive the spirit veins and revive the ancient desolate region, the land of the deceased immortals was a place that he could not avoid. Even if he could not really solve the problem and completely revive the Dragon Vein, he had to know the extent of the damage to the Dragon Vein and see if there was an effective method. In that case, let's part ways here. Immediately after, Ziyue's expression turned serious. He casually bowed and then moved his body, flying straight toward the land of the deceased immortals. In the distance, a voice could be heard, "Until we meet again. See you again. I wish you all the best." Fu Yunfan and the others quickly replied. After crossing this river, we will reach the land of the deceased immortals. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Ziyue stood in front of a river in the distance. The place where they were previously was actually extremely deep in the central region, not far from the land of the deceased immortals. Therefore, Ziyue quickly approached the intersection between the central region and the land of the deceased immortals. The Yangtze River just happened to separate these two places. This river should be the Cloud Crossing River. The river is murky. In this special environment, even the primordial spirit cannot enter. However, there are many terrifying river monsters and strange fish. Ordinary cultivators would have to cross this cloud-crossing river before entering the land of the deceased immortals. The information about this place flashed through Ziyue's mind, but his face was calm. Without hesitation, he moved his body and rushed toward the opposite side of the river. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When Ziyue rushed out of the river and rushed toward the opposite side, the originally calm river instantly boiled. Then, countless river monsters and terrifying fish opened their bloody mouths and breathed out an endless stench. They also shot out terrifying divine light toward Ziua. This is a good place to cleanse one's spiritual energy. Seeing this, Ziua's eyes lit up. With a thought, a flying sword flashed and rushed toward the river monsters. Poof! 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 One by one, the river monsters were pierced by the flying sword. Their consciousness was annihilated and they died completely. It was Ziua's heart sword. With the sharpness of his flying sword and the profoundness of the heart sword, these fish monsters were at most in the primordial spirit realm. Most of them were only in the golden elixir realm. There was no way they could resist at all. With a single slash of the sword, a group of fish monsters fell. With several consecutive slashes, a large group of fish monsters floated up and down in the river with their bellies turned upside down. At the same time, he stretched out his hand, and a long staff appeared in his hand. After that, he suddenly swung it out. Boom! 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 The shadows of the staff filled the sky, like lightning directly smashing towards all the fish monsters. 72 stick strikes of the heavens, 36 stick strikes of the heavens, 18 stick strikes of the heavens, 9 stick strikes of the heavens. Almost every time the staff struck down, a fish monster would fall. The terrifying power was unstoppable, crushing everything in its path. In just an instant, it caused the originally densely packed fish monsters in the surroundings to dissipate into nothingness. Further away, the fish monsters that had been lured over quickly turned back as soon as they rushed out of the water. They were afraid that if they were one step slower, they would follow in their companions' footsteps. That's it? Ziua was rather satisfied when he saw that his soul energy had increased by a large margin. But seeing that there were no more fish monsters rushing out of Cloud Crossing River, he was a little unwilling. He had a soul energy gap of 20 billion. Now that he was short of his boss, he was very anxious. Naturally, he was unwilling to give up and let go of any opportunity to increase his soul energy. Therefore, the power of his primordial spirit surged and quickly rushed into the long staff in his hand. Buzz! 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 That long stick immediately expanded, as if it had been inflated with air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a giant pillar that reached the sky. Then, he directly pierced into Cloud Crossing River and began to stir wildly. Ziua's physical strength was definitely at the top of the world. It was incomparably terrifying. Under the frenzied stirring, the huge power shook and immediately formed a terrifying vortex. These fish monsters had only instinctively feared Ziua and did not dare to tangle with him. Now that Ziua was stirring up trouble, they were naturally furious and lost their minds. Therefore, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After a series of splashing sounds, a group of fish monsters immediately rushed out and attacked Ziua madly. Good timing! Ziua was overjoyed. He did not stop what he was doing. With a thought, his flying sword shot out like a stream of light. Poof! 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 The fish monsters that had just rushed out were all killed by him. Their bellies turned upside down and they sank into the river. Chapter 832. After another round of fighting, another 100 fish monsters were killed. Ziua's figure flashed, and he went to another part of the river. He began to turn the river upside down and lure the fish monsters. These fish monsters were ferocious and cruel. They had always been regarded as a huge obstacle between the central area of the ancient battlefield and the land of the deceased immortals. Countless cultivators in the late and peak of the primordial soul realm had a headache. They had to plan carefully before they dared to cross the river. However, to Ziua, there was no obstacle at all. He pushed his way through and stirred up the wind and rain. He constantly lured the fish monsters out of the river and killed them crazily. In a short period of time, hundreds of miles of river had been cleansed by him. Apart from a few fish monsters that instinctively felt fear and did not rush out of the river, the rest were all killed by him. Their corpses were strewn all over the river, bobbing up and down. This time, to these fish monsters, it was really a disaster. They had never thought that they, who were once the overlords of the ancient battlefield, would suffer such a disaster. It's a pity that this Yundujiang is still too small. The total number of fish monsters born is limited. Otherwise, it would definitely increase my spiritual power by a lot. Bai Ziyue took a look at his stats window and saw that his spirit energy had reached 1.25 billion points. He sighed, but he was actually quite satisfied with it. After all, no matter what, this increase in spiritual power was a pleasant surprise for him. At this moment, Ziyue's figure paused for a moment and he directly crossed over to the land of the deceased immortals. After crossing the Yundujiang, there was a desolate landscape of mountains and rivers. In fact, apart from a few places in the entire ancient battlefield, most places were desolate and dilapidated. Some places had even gone through the passage of time, and not a single blade of grass grew. Obviously, these places had been affected by the Great War and their vitality had been wiped out. Above the mountains and rivers, there was an extremely thick fog. It greatly affected a cultivator's vision and primordial soul detection ability. However, although the mist was dense, it actually did not have much of an effect on Ziyue. With his golden soul, he was already at an extremely high level of existence. Not only did he have excellent eyesight, but the probing abilities of his soul also far surpassed ordinary true cultivators of the same level. Naturally, the mist did not have much of an effect on his battle prowess. What Ziyue was really afraid of was the immortal killing chi hidden in the mist. This fiendish immortal chi is said to be a strange energy that is emitted when an ancient immortal corpse breathes. Not only was the level of energy extremely high, but it also had the ability to corrode everything and corrupt one's essence soul. Once contaminated, it is often extremely difficult to remove, and it will directly affect the cultivator's Tao path. Ziyue's primordial spirit was extremely sensitive. He could clearly sense the immortal killing aura that was faintly drifting in the fog. This immortal killing aura presented a strange dark red color. Strands of immortal killing aura were connected to each other and almost intertwined with the entire world, forming an inescapable net that would cause people to unknowingly touch. Ziyue was not afraid of this. After all, his primordial spirit was pure and was a unique golden color in the star realm. His body also emitted a fluorescent light with the operation of the grand primordial spirit cannon. Naturally, his body was surrounded by chi and blood. Unless he encountered a large amount of immortal killing aura, it was extremely rare for immortal killing aura to invade his body and affect his Tao path. However, just in case, he could not help but perform the true dragon dark armor technique and use the Kunwu Golden Pagoda to cover his body with a dark light. Then, he went deep into the cave while withstanding the celestial baleful chi. Primordial Tao fruit, golden court flower, divine wood of 10,000 origins. Although the land of the fallen immortals is full of danger, the number and quality of the treasures it contains are countless times more than the outside world. I have only traveled for a short distance, and I have already gained so much. Moreover, many of the treasures are simply difficult to find in the outside world. Ziyue was overjoyed. Some of these heavenly treasures would be of great use even to him. For example, the primordial Tao fruit was a kind of immortal fruit that could purify one's primordial spirit and increase one's cultivation level. With Ziyue's cultivation speed, the effect was at least equivalent to tirelessly cultivating for almost a year. As for the golden court flower, it was actually a kind of highly poisonous item. When used with a certain secret technique, it could poison a cultivator's primordial spirit and kill the cultivator's primordial spirit. As for the divine wood of 10,000 origins, it was actually a kind of top refining material that could only be born in special environments through special changes in chi treasures, and heavenly treasures grew freely in the special environment of the ancient battlefield. It could be said that there was a dazzling array of treasures and was extremely rich. Ziue picked them one by one and then sealed them in special jade boxes to ensure that the medicinal power would not be lost. Soon, he had collected nearly 100 jade boxes. Although many of the spiritual materials were not of much use to him, they were all shockingly valuable. Suddenly, Ziue's expression changed. He felt that the true dragon dark armor technique outside his body was rapidly depleting. At the same time, a spatial crack that could almost connect the heavens and the earth and cut everything appeared silently in front of him. He hurriedly used the instant retreat and retreated 100 miles away in the blink of an eye to avoid the spatial crack. Then, he saw with his own eyes that the spatial crack was expanding rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped the hundreds of feet around where Ziue was originally at. The space in that area was shredded into pieces and was cut into special spatial cube. After a long time, the area gradually recovered with the flow of the spatial fluctuations. The spatial crack dissipated and the spatial cubes that were originally cut into pieces quickly recovered. The surrounding fog and divine evil chi that had been scattered in the surroundings also quickly flowed into the area after the space returned to normal. Under the calm and tranquil environment, it was as if nothing had happened and it was filled with a tranquil aura. I can't believe that this spatial rift appeared so suddenly. It happened so suddenly and without any warning. It is not like an ordinary spatial crack that is fixed in a certain area. If it is not touched, it will always be there, motionless, low-key and hidden. However, the spatial cracks in the land of the fallen immortals in the barren ancient battlefield are completely different. Not only will it appear abruptly, but it will also follow the cultivator's trajectory and extend to pursue and kill. If one is slightly slower, he will definitely fall into this inescapable net and be crazily shredded by the continuous spatial cracks. Ziue frowned slightly and pondered silently. This time, before the spatial crack appeared, he really did not notice it at all. If he had not maintained the true dragon dark armor technique at all times, that blow would have really landed on his body. Even with the strength of his physical body, it would have been difficult for him to resist it. At least, he would have been injured. And if he had reacted a little slower and did not use the instant retreat in time to retreat more than 100 miles away, the spatial crack that covered his head would have definitely broken his true dragon dark armor technique. Dangerous. The land of the fallen immortals is indeed dangerous. Ziue was originally a little proud. He had obtained more than 100 heavenly treasures, which was enough to increase his foundation by a lot. However, the spatial crack this time immediately woke him up and his face became much more serious. He looked at the area where the spatial crack was again. After thinking for a while, he used his mind and the flying sword pierced through. It was soundless and there was no spatial crack. Everything seemed calm and tranquil. However, this scene caused Bai Ziue to be even more shocked. Because this meant that the spatial crack in that area had actually disappeared completely. At least at this moment, there was no trace of a spatial crack. But at the same time, this also meant that Ziue could be attacked by such a powerful spatial crack again in any other place. Let's go deeper. The magnificent mountain in front should be the center of the dragon vein in the barren ancient region. The original mountain was actually more magnificent and tall. However, because of a great battle, the dragon vein was cut into two halves. In this way, the dragon vein was broken and the earth collapsed. Countless areas in the barren ancient region could not get the nourishment of the spiritual chi lei vein. Naturally, the barren ancient region could not recover from this setback. It became an era where even the god realm cultivators could become the strongest. Ziue sighed, and a trace of reminiscence flashed in his eyes. He had also read some relatively general introductions to the prosperous era of the barren ancient region from some ancient book. He knew that it was a prosperous place that was not inferior to the firmament territory. However, Now it had become a place where even the gold core realm cultivators could not be born. Thinking of his previous difficulties in cultivation, he sighed again. However, as the saying goes, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. Although the dragon vein is broken, there is still spiritual chi flowing in it, spewing out endless essence of heaven and earth and the essence of all things. It is more brilliant than the mountain protection formation of countless top sections. This was also the reason why the various ferocious beasts in this place were unexpectedly powerful even though they did not have much intelligence. It is also worth mentioning that the celestial killing chi in the main court of the dragon vein is many times richer than in other places. It seems that the source of the celestial killing chi is the area where the dragon vein is located. Does this mean that the legendary immortal corpse is also on the dragon vein? Ziyue's expression changed slightly. The immortal corpse was a terrifying existence that had been born again after the death of the top split god realm cultivator who had participated in the immortal battle 10,000 years ago. Although it was only instinct, and it was impossible for him to display the strength of his peak, the immortal corpse was absolutely terrifying. After all, the immortal corpse's strength was still there. When it attacked instinctively, it would often contain endless mysteries. No matter how confident Ziyue was in his own strength, if he did not become a split god realm cultivator and become a powerful cultivator of the immortal path, he would not be able to escape from the seal of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao. Naturally, when faced with such a terrifying existence as the immortal corpse, he would be a little more cautious. When he thought of this, his heart trembled, but his eyes were calm and determined. Since he was here, he did not intend to leave easily. Step by step, Ziyue began to walk around the dragon vein. He began to carefully examine the extent of the damage to the dragon vein to see if there was any possibility of it being repaired. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Given by Ziyue's array Dao strength and his keen eyes, he was truly tyrannical to the extreme. In just a short period of time, he sensed that there was something different about the dragon vein. The extent of the damage to the dragon vein does not seem to be as great as I thought. Originally, I thought that the dragon vein in the ancient barren region was in tatters and probably only lingered on at death's door, or even that the entire dragon vein had been cut off. In the end, although the aura of the dragon vein is weak, at least 100 times weaker than when it was in the entire province, there was still the ancestral origin of the dragon vein. However, the dragon court ancestral chi is still being produced. Under the nourishment of the dragon court ancestral chi, the spiritual chi in this world is not completely exhausted. The dragon vein itself is also using the dragon court ancestral chi to constantly tidy up the earth chi and slowly repair itself. Ziyue was pleasantly surprised at first. If the dragon vein was completely destroyed and died, it would be almost impossible for him to reactivate it and nourish the entire ancient barren region. The price he would have to pay was too great. After all, the resources in the astral realm were limited. He would not really do something as crazy as cutting off dragon veins in other places to nourish the astral realm's dragon vein. But now the dragon vein was not completely dead, and the ancestral origin of the dragon vein was still being born. This naturally meant that as long as he tidied up the spiritual energy in the dragon vein so that it could flow unimpeded everywhere, the dragon vein would naturally gradually recover. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the ancient desolate region would naturally become rich and abundant again, returning to its original vitality. But soon, Ziyue realized that something was amiss. The dragon vein is broken and dilapidated. It was already in a half-dead state. But someone actually set up a corpse-nurturing ground here. Ziyue was shocked, and his face instantly became gloomy. A corpse-nurturing ground naturally gathered in and had a great impact on the dragon vein. Although it would not cause the dragon vein to completely collapse, it would greatly affect the dragon vein's recovery. Given the dragon vein's original condition, even if it slowly recovered, even if it could not fully recover after 10,000 years, it would definitely be able to restore more than half of the dragon vein. The spiritual energy in the entire ancient barren region would be at least 3 to 5 times richer than it was now. In the end, because of the corpse nurturing ground's interference, the dragon vein had not been able to recover. More than half of its power had poured into the corpse nurturing ground. Xiu's joy at seeing the dragon vein still alive, and the ancestral origin of the dragon vein gushing out was instantly washed away. He was furious to the extreme. Thinking of the legendary immortal corpse, he knew that it must be a perfected immortal expert who had used the special environment of the dragon vein to refine the corpse of an expert who had died in the battle back then into an immortal corpse puppet. The plan of eternity was really far-reaching. But it was true that the price of harming the entire ancient barren region, countless people, and countless cultivators' Tao paths. The madness and insanity of this matter chilled his heart. No matter who this person is, no matter what reason he has for what he has done. As long as I'm still alive, I must kill him. Xiu almost instantly had the intention to kill. Chapter 833. I was right to come to the ancient desolate battlefield. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to discover such a huge conspiracy and scheme. Xiu's killing intent burned fiercely, but he quickly calmed down. He was well aware of his own strength. He was even more aware that the person behind the scenes was able to use the dragon vein of a domain as the foundation of the formation, the corpses of ancient immortals as the materials, and the special environment of the ancient desolate region battlefield to create the corpse nurturing ground. His methods were definitely even more brilliant. Putting everything else aside, just this corpse nurturing land formation alone was something that he could detect because his array skills had reached the advanced 5th grade and could be called a top array master. Other cultivators, even if they were powerful and had the strength of the supreme realm, would not be able to detect it at all. This was because this formation was too ingenious. It was hidden in layers of killing formations, but it also used killing formations as the foundation, hidden formations within formations, and connected to each other. It was estimated that even a cultivator with the same 5th grade array skills would not be able to detect it in a short period of time. The cultivator who can set up this formation, regardless of his strength, is definitely above me in terms of array skills and has reached the 6th grade. A 6th grade array master is known as the god of array skills. His control of large formations is already beyond imagination. It would take at least thousands of years of painstaking research to be able to achieve anything. As for a 7th grade array master, that is an existence that uses stars as a formation. Not to mention the astral realm, even in the galaxy where the astral realm is located, it would be difficult to find one. Xiu pondered and deeply understood the gap between him and the person behind the scenes. The other party had reached the 6th grade god of array skills in terms of array skills. As for the strength of the immortal technique realm, to be able to survive the battle of perfected immortals 10,000 years ago, he was at least at the advanced stage of the spirit-severing stage. He was definitely much stronger than Xiu and could probably crush him to death with a wave of his hand. Although I had long expected that there would be spirit-severing stage experts in this ancient desolate battlefield, and it was very likely that I would encounter the other party. However, I definitely did not expect to be directly enemies with the other party. Xiu felt a deep pressure, and even his breathing trembled. That was an instinctive reaction after sensing a life-and-death crisis. However, the killing intent in his heart did not lessen in the slightest because of this. Instead, it burned even more intensely. This was because regardless of whether Xiu was willing or not, he was now the most powerful person who had walked out of the ancient desolate region. His fate was actually connected to the entire ancient desolate region. If the dragon veins in the ancient barren region were to be revived, the immortal Tao would flourish and the fate would be connected. In fact, Ziyue's cultivation would also be smooth, and he would improve rapidly. For example, if the ancient barren region was half as prosperous as the firmament territory, he would have created his own heaven-breaking Tao technique long ago. In the end, even though his killing heart had awakened and he was about to subdue it, he still felt that he was lacking a little bit. He was still unable to cross that hurdle and comprehend it. Now that he understood that the severing of the dragon vein and the slow recovery of the ancient desolate region was related to this spirit-severing expert that he had never met before, and most importantly, what the other party had done had indeed gone against his own conscience and contradicted his Tao heart. Naturally, anger surged in his heart and killing intent rose. However, with my current strength, if I really encounter the other party and fight, I have no chance of winning. The existence above the advanced stage of the spirit-severing realm is too powerful. Once they attack with their full strength, they can even shatter the entire astral boundary. Now I can't even break the suppression of heaven and earth and the seal of the great Tao. Naturally, I can't overestimate myself and rashly seek death with such an existence. Ziyue's thoughts drifted. Although he was not sure where the spirit-severing expert was, whether he was still in the ancient desolate battlefield, or whether the other party had been seriously injured in the great battle of ancient times and his strength had been severely damaged, he was not sure. But in his heart, he was still very obedient and did not want to encounter the spirit-severing expert so soon. However, if he did nothing, it was definitely not Ziyue's style of doing things. Thinking of this, a trace of determination flashed across his eyes. No matter what, I have to break this corpse cultivation land formation first. As long as the corpse cultivation land formation is broken, the dragon court ancestral chi emitted from the dragon veins in the ancient desolate region will be able to spread and nourish the entire ancient desolate region and repair the damage to the dragon veins. Naturally, the entire dragon veins will gradually recover and become stronger. Although the recovery speed will be very slow at the beginning, if the dragon veins' self-recovery ability is used to recover, it will take at least 10,000 years to recover to its peak. However, it is still better than standing still or slowly declining. If this corpse cultivation land formation is allowed to continuously erode the dragon veins and intercept the dragon court ancestral chi, the entire ancient desolate region's dragon veins may really wither. At that time, for the many cultivators, humans, and all living things in the ancient desolate region, it will be a disaster. The entire ancient desolate region may really sink. From then on, natural disasters will continue, man-made disasters will run rampant, and the sky will collapse and the earth will crack. Lightning will descend, mountains and rivers will be severed, and seawater will be reversed. It will be a doomsday scene. Ziyue's mind could not help but be a little agitated. Then, his eyes became clear and he had a plan. If he had not discovered it, it would have been fine. Now that he had discovered the location of the corpse cultivation land formation, he naturally would not let it go. At the very least, he had to break the corpse cultivation land formation and pull out the immortal corpse. From then on, the dragon veins will once again begin to nourish the dried-up spirit veins in the ancient desolate region. If possible, he even wanted to completely kill and suppress the immortal corpse, of course. The premise of all this was that the spirit-severing stage expert did not appear. With my strength as an advanced 5th-grade array master, there are not many arrays in the world that can stump me. Although this corpse cultivation land formation was set up by a 6th-grade array master, it is because it is a combination array. It is only formed when one killing array is connected and matched. Therefore, to me, it is actually just a little more effort to break the array in the outer area one after another. That is enough. The only problem is the influence of the immortal baleful chi that soared into the sky after the formation was broken. Ziyue naturally understood that the immortal evil chi was actually the special aura emitted by the immortal corpse. If he did not have a way to deal with it, then not to mention fighting with the immortal corpse and killing it, even after breaking the array, the soaring immortal evil chi baptism would be difficult for him to bear. Thinking of this, he looked at his surroundings and felt wisps of immortal evil chi drifting in the void. After thinking for a while, he directly let down his defense and carefully guided a wisp of immortal evil chi into his body. As the saying goes, how can one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? If he wanted to fight with the immortal corpse, he naturally had to know whether he could bear the invasion of the immortal evil chi. Sizzle, when the immortal evil chi approached Ziyue, it almost instantly drilled into Ziyue's body. A strange and cold aura instantly rose in Ziyue's heart, and as if it had its own consciousness, it directly surged towards Ziyue's primordial spirit. Ziyue's face changed slightly. This immortal evil chi was indeed strange and powerful. He quickly controlled the flow of his chi and blood, and used the chi and blood gang to block it. Almost 20% of the chi and blood gang was one of Ziyue's original powers. It was pure and powerful. When it intertwined with the immortal evil chi, it instantly annihilated the evil chi in the immortal evil chi, leaving only a wisp of pure immortal evil chi. As the chi and blood circulated, the immortal evil chi flowed into his body and nourished his body and mind. The chi and blood gang can extinguish the evil chi in the immortal evil chi, but it also consumes a lot of energy. A wisp of immortal evil chi requires at least 10 chi and blood gang to neutralize the evil chi in it. It's fine if it's just a little, but once there's a lot, I guess I can't bear it. The Supreme Realm expert back then must have been attacked by a large amount of immortal evil chi, which caused him to be seriously injured. He never recovered and was affected by it, causing his strength to drop continuously. Ziyue tested that his chi and blood could extinguish the immortal evil chi, and he was relieved. Let's continue. This time, let's see if the power of my primordial spirit can also extinguish the immortal evil chi. As he thought about it, he quickly captured another wisp of immortal evil chi into his body. This time, he controlled the power of his primordial spirit to extinguish the immortal evil chi. Very soon, the evil chi in the immortal evil chi was completely extinguished, leaving only a wisp of immortal evil chi. After it was absorbed by Ziyue's primordial spirit, he felt relieved. After the evil chi in the immortal evil chi dissipated, what was left was pure immortal spirit chi. This immortal spirit chi was a power that was a level higher than the spiritual energy in the universe. Absorbing it over a long period of time was also very beneficial to him. The power of the primordial spirit has an obvious effect on the evil chi in the immortal evil chi. However, a wisp of immortal evil chi usually requires 10 wisps of the power of the primordial spirit to extinguish it. Obviously, the immortal evil chi's energy level is higher than the power of my primordial spirit. Ziyue silently compared the two, and was not surprised. The immortal evil chi was actually transformed from the immortal spirit chi that was contaminated with the evil chi in the immortal corpse. After the evil chi was extinguished, only the immortal spirit chi was left, which could be absorbed and transformed by him. Finally, I need to test the effect of the immortal evil chi on my primordial spirit. Ziyue tested that his chi and blood gang chi and the power of the primordial spirit had an obvious defensive effect against the immortal evil chi. He was in a good mood and immediately planned to carry out the last test. That was to let the immortal evil chi enter his body without extinguishing it. He wanted to see what effect the immortal evil chi would have on his primordial spirit. Thinking of this, he once again controlled a wisp of immortal evil chi to enter his body. The moment the cold aura entered, the chi and blood gang chi and the power of the primordial spirit in Ziyue's body began to surge instinctively, wanting to completely extinguish it. However, under Ziyue's deliberate control, the chi and blood gang chi and the power of the primordial spirit instantly calmed down. Then, the immortal evil chi directly entered Ziyue's primordial spirit and directly attached to it. Then, almost instantly, it was extinguished and turned into pure immortal spirit chi, nourishing Ziyue's primordial spirit. Ziyue carefully sensed all this, and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. No effect? That immortal evil chi did not seem to have any effect on his primordial spirit? Just as it approached, the immortal evil chi automatically disintegrated under the primordial spirit chi and turned into ashes, leaving only the immortal spirit chi to be absorbed by him. Yes, my primordial spirit is extraordinary after all. It is a primordial spirit that is formed from a complete and transparent soul. After evolution, it is pure gold. It is naturally not afraid of being attacked by any strange energy. Even the defense against primordial spirit attacks is a lot stronger. Although the immortal evil chi is strong like maggots attached to the bones, which greatly affects the primordial spirit of a cultivator and is extremely difficult to get rid of, it is completely useless to me. Instead, it will become nourishment for me, and I will absorb it as immortal spirit chi to recover my primordial spirit and improve my cultivation. Ziyue's face flickered with joy. Immortal spiritual chi was of an extremely high level. It was extremely beneficial to his cultivation. Compared to the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the chi of heaven and earth, and the purple chi of the great Tao, it was much more superior. It was extremely helpful in purifying a cultivator's primordial spirit and improving a cultivator's cultivation. After letting go of the last worry in his heart, Ziyue finally glanced at the corpse formation above the dragon vein in the distance. The corpse formation was actually made up of 8 shocking killing formations, supplemented by a yin-yang conversion formation and 9 other formations. Each of the 9 grand formations had reached the high rank of the 5th grade, and the grand formation that was formed when they were combined had reached the 6th grade. If a formation master's formation Tao had reached the 6th level, all he needed to do was to find the core of the great formation, the yin-yang transformation formation, and break it. Naturally, the great formation of the land of corpse cultivation would be broken. However, Ziyue was still a distance away from becoming a 6th grade formation master. Although he could see the formation of the entire formation and knew that it was a combination of different formations, he did not know which one was the core of the formation, the yin-yang conversion formation. Naturally, it would be relatively difficult to break it. Now, I can only choose a stupid method. Directly rush into one of the formations. If I am lucky and choose the right yin-yang conversion formation, it would be the best. Without the interference of the killing formations, it would be relatively easier for me to break the formation. If I am unlucky and step into one of the shocking killing formations, it is fine. I can just break it directly. A single high-grade 5-array formation won't be able to stop me. Ziyue thought in his heart, but he did not dare to let his guard down. He used the heaven patching technique, the Great Way Dharma Laksana, and other means to raise his battle strength to the extreme. Then, he used the real dragon armor technique to cover himself in the real dragon defense. He also took out the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, ready to hide in the pagoda at any time. Then, he randomly chose a formation and rushed straight in. Buzz, Ziyue stretched out his hand and easily tore open a crack. Then, he rushed into the formation. What a strong immortal spirit chi! Then, almost at the next moment, Ziyue exclaimed. Chapter 834. The celestial killing chi in the formation was unbelievably thick. As soon as Ziyue entered the formation, he immediately felt that the celestial killing chi was like a ferocious giant beast that kept attacking him. Even though the baleful immortal chi was quickly blocked by his true dragon black armor technique, the baleful immortal chi was also an offensive technique. As it continued to invade, it was also wearing down Ziyue's defensive technique. Of course, with the defensive power of Ziyue's true dragon black armor technique, It would take a long time for the baleful immortal chi to invade and wear it down. Not to mention, Ziyue could use his spiritual energy to continuously restore the power of his primordial spirit and maintain his defensive technique. However, such a scene made Ziyue think of the legendary Supreme Realm expert who was attacked in the land of the fallen immortals. Perhaps the Supreme Realm expert accidentally fell into this killing formation. Although he tried his best to resist the baleful immortal chi's attack, the power of his primordial spirit was limited. In addition, under the effect of the formation, he was exhausted and the baleful immortal chi invaded his primordial spirit. Although he tried his best and escaped from the killing formation, his primordial spirit was invaded by the baleful immortal chi and caused irreversible damage. It affected his Taoist path, and he would never be able to advance further. This was, in fact, something that was extremely likely. However, since the baleful immortal chi has no effect on me, why should I resist it? Then, Ziyue thought of his golden primordial spirit that was pure and flawless, and was not affected by the baleful immortal chi at all. He could even directly absorb it. Thus, he quickly let go of the restrictions and directly guided the turbulent baleful immortal chi into his body. He continuously used the primordial spirit realm technique that he created, the great primordial spirit scripture, to refine the baleful immortal chi. To others, the terrifying and turbulent baleful immortal chi dissipated the moment it came into contact with Ziyue's golden primordial spirit. It turned into pure immortal chi and was continuously converted and absorbed by him. Then, he slowly increased the speed of his cultivation. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. Ziyue, who was operating the Grand Yuan Spirit Scripture with all his might, seemed to be able to swallow the entire world as he absorbed all the immortal baleful chi into his body. The divine evil chi was originally the ancestral chi of the dragon court that was born in the dragon vein. After being contaminated by the divine evil chi of the immortal corpse, the high-grade spiritual chi that had been contaminated was almost endless. After tens of thousands of years of accumulation, even though a lot of it had been dissipated, the divine evil chi within the formation that enveloped the entire land of the deceased immortals was only a part of it. However, for Ziyue it was indeed a supreme treasure land. After a period of cultivation, Ziyue actually felt that the power of his primordial spirit was improving, and the strength of his physical body was increasing. Even though the speed was extremely slow, and such an increase was unable to help him break through the suppression of the world and the seal of the great Tao, it still made him feel a wave of joy. And at this time, his cultivation seemed to have finally triggered a change in the formation. A terrifying force of coercion was rapidly activated and descended. Immediately after, streaks of orange flames rushed toward Ziyue. As expected, my luck is not as good as I thought. This time, I have entered one of the great killing formations. Although Ziyue was operating the Grand Yuan Spirit Scripture madly in his body and continuously absorbing the immortal baleful chi, most of his attention was actually placed on the formation. The moment the flames descended, Ziyue casually took out a carpet-like Dharma treasure. This carpet-like Dharma treasure was one of the spoils of war that he had previously obtained. It was a high-grade primordial spirit defensive treasure, the fire-repelling spiritual carpet. Its defensive effect against fire attacks was extremely good. At this time, when he took it out, its defensive effect against fire was not inferior to that of a supreme-grade primordial spirit defensive treasure. Although this Dharma treasure had only been briefly refined by Ziyue, and could not be used freely like his natal Dharma treasure, the North Sea Flying Sword, and the spiritual treasure, the Kunwa Golden Pagoda, but under the nourishment of Ziyue's special golden primordial spirit power, it was able to display most of its effects. In the blink of an eye, the entire carpet rapidly expanded, as if it could cover the entire world, and even enveloped Ziyue within it, completely blocking the orange flames outside. This fire-repelling spiritual carpet really makes the best use of everything. Ziyu sighed in his heart, but soon divided his attention. On one hand, he was operating the Grand Yuan Spirit Scripture to continuously absorb the immortal baleful qi, and on the other hand, he was using the array probing technique to carefully observe the changes in the formation's operation, looking for the flaws in it. This formation was different from the 5th grade formation that he had refined before. This was a pure life and death formation. As long as the formation was not broken, the attacks would not stop, and there would be no changes. Therefore, Ziyu stayed in it, and there was no other way but to break the formation. Otherwise, the endless attacks would not be a big threat to him in a short period of time, but the consumption of his primordial spirit power would be extremely great. He naturally did not want to get into such trouble. This formation's operation is mysterious, and it is really brilliant. Even the position of the formation's foundation is relatively hidden. Bai Ziyu observed carefully, and his face soon revealed a moved expression. This was because even with his formation skills, he could not figure out the mysteries of this formation in a short period of time. Even the position of the formation's foundation, which was connected to the entire formation, required a lot of effort before he could detect it. He could not help but exclaim in amazement. He could not help but sigh at the power of a 6th grade formation master. Even if the formation was also a 5th grade formation, it was not something that an ordinary 5th grade formation master could break. Seeing this, Ziyu finally began to get serious. With a thought, a flying sword quickly pierced out. Rumble! This sword was the heart sword technique. Given by Ziyu's means, even a casual strike would be extremely terrifying. The heart sword technique was a supreme Dao technique created by the heart sword True Venerate. After Bai Ziyu had improved it to the perfected level, its power had already reached the level of the supreme Dao boundary. When it struck the great formation, even though it had been counteracted by layers of great formations, it still managed to revive the entire formation. It also had to borrow the power of the other 8 great formations to suppress the power of this strike. This was actually the terrifying part of the corpse nurturing land formation. Even if Ziyu had only entered one of the killing formations, the formations were combined. When Ziyu attacked one formation, the power could be dispersed and absorbed by the other formations. Naturally, the defensive power of the formation was greatly increased. Therefore, even if Ziyu's attack power had reached the level of the supreme state, and because his power was too strong and his foundation was too deep, his attack could last for 3 to 5 breaths. However, he could not completely break the killing formation. No matter what formation it is, as long as the attack power is strong enough, it can be broken by force. Unfortunately, this killing formation is connected to the other 8 formations. Under the combination of the formations, the defensive power of the formation is greatly increased. Even if I attack continuously, I won't be able to break it in a short time. Ziyu could not help but sigh as he looked around. Due to the recovery of the formation, even the power of the descending flames was greatly weakened. However, all of this did not matter to Ziyu. He never thought that he would be able to break through the formation on his own. He just wanted to borrow the power of his attack to make the entire formation operate crazily. As for the operation of a great formation, it often needed to borrow the power of the countless formation bases and the formation eyes of the entire great formation. The greater the pressure, the faster the great formation would operate, and the easier it would be to reveal flaws and be discovered by him. At this moment, when Ziyu attacked with his sword and the formation was operating crazily, Ziyu immediately used the formation probing technique and finally discovered some details of the operation of the formation. His eyes lit up, and he hurriedly extended his finger and pointed at a corner of the void. A ray of starlight shot out, and in a flash, an orange-red fiend god statue appeared in front of him. This was the scene of Bai Ziyu drawing out the power of the formation that was originally hidden in the depths of the void with the help of the formation probing method. Go! When the formation base appeared, Ziyue's eyes lit up and he quickly controlled the flying sword to dodge. Puff! The flying sword streaked across the sky and almost instantly destroyed the formation base and turned it into powder. Boom! When the formation base shattered, the formation immediately produced a backlash. A terrifying orange-red flame instantly turned into a stream of light and charged toward by Ziyue. ZZZ, even Ziyue's superior primordial spirit defensive treasure, the fire-repelling spiritual carpet, shook slightly as if it could not withstand the attack. The backlash of this killing formation is beyond my expectations, Ziyue muttered. This flame attack was not weaker than the full-force attack of an expert at the peak of the primordial spirit realm. However, when the first formation base was destroyed, the operation of the entire formation immediately changed. Not only was there a slight weakening, but there was also a hint of obscurity in the operation of the formation. Ziyue found the hiding places of the second, third and fourth formation bases without much effort. Then, he attacked one by one and quickly destroyed the formation bases. 1 tower, 2 towers, 3 towers. The more formation bases were destroyed, the more stagnant the operation of the formation became. Naturally, the power of the formation weakened and the backlash of the formation also began to decrease significantly. Good. Soon, I'll be able to break this killing formation apart very soon. As long as I destroy more than half of the formation bases, even if the mantra of the formation is not broken, I am confident that I will be able to destroy it with one attack. Bai Ziyue's face was filled with excitement as he continued to attack. Poof! Poof! Just like that, 2 more array foundations were destroyed by him. Boom boom boom! The backlash of the 2 formations also landed on his superior primordial spirit defensive treasure, the fire-repelling spiritual carpet. Then, under the wanton suppression of the spiritual power of the spiritual carpet, it was completely destroyed. At this time, the backlash of the formation was less than half of what it was at its peak. Next, let me try to break through the formation with brute force. I'll shatter the entire formation. Ziyue sensed a little and finally felt a little impatient. Although it was very easy for him to destroy the formation bases, it was still troublesome. What he wanted to do even more was to attack recklessly and break this formation to his heart's content. Previously, the formation was complete and connected with the other 8 formations, so it was naturally much more difficult for Ziyue to break it. Now, almost half of the formation bases of the formation were destroyed and the power of the formation was greatly weakened. He only hesitated for a moment and soon made up his mind. Then, without any hesitation, the power of the primordial spirit in his body surged wildly and rushed into his North Sea flying sword. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Under the influx of the terrifying power, the tip of the flying sword trembled violently, as if it could not hold back and rushed out. Then the flying sword moved slightly, seemingly slow but actually fast. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared in place, as if it had penetrated the void and disappeared without a trace. Then, when the attack really fell, bang, 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 somewhere in the void, several formation bases were directly smashed. At the same time, the flying sword seemed to have finally emerged from the depths of space and blasted on the formation. The terrifying power did not dissipate, but all poured into the tip of the flying sword. In an instant, the formation madly operated, desperately resisting the attack. The formation has operated to 80%? Is it still a little short? Bai Ziyue sensed the changes in the grand formation and knew its limit. The grand formation had recovered 80% of its power, and only 20% remained before it could operate at full power. Without any hesitation, he stretched out his hand and took out a long rod. Then, the qi and blood in his body surged, and even his whole figure seemed to have become a little taller. He swung the stick out. Rumble! The stick shadows all over the sky rushed out in an instant. At this moment, it was Ziyue who used the heaven-shocking stick technique. the heaven-shocking 72 stick strikes, the heaven-shocking 36 stick strikes, the heaven-shocking 18 stick strikes, the heaven-shocking 9 stick strikes. The sticks were different, but they all bombarded the entire formation. The stick shadows, one stick after another, were incomparably dense. Moreover, the power of each stick seemed to be increasing with Xiu's attack. When the stick shadows reached the heaven-shocking 9 stick strikes, the attack power was completely promoted to the level of the Supreme Realm. The 9 stick shadows, each blow comparable to the full-strength attack of a Supreme Realm expert, blasted down at the same time. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In an instant, the formation, which was constantly recovering, began to operate crazily again. 80%, 90%, 100%. The moment this killing formation operated to 100%, Xiu once again controlled the North Sea flying sword and cut through the sky. This sword was also the heart sword technique. It also disappeared the moment it rushed out, as if it had penetrated space, and then appeared again in the void above the completely recovered formation. Then, there was a huge tremor. Boom! Heaven and earth were in chaos and the earth shattered. Then, the whole void was fragmented, and the original appearance of the surrounding mountains and rivers was revealed. Even the fog that originally shrouded the whole world seemed to have become clearer because of this blow, and vaguely, a ray of the morning sun sprinkled on Xiu's body, dispelling a trace of haze in his heart. This formation had been broken. Chapter 835. The first great formation has finally been broken. 8 more to go. Xiu relaxed and a look of joy appeared on his face. Then, with a wave of his hand, the formation eye of the great formation was drawn to him. The formation eye was an oval-shaped, fiery red crystal. It was only the size of a fist, but it was extremely heavy. Even with Xiu's strength, he could feel its heaviness when he held it. Most importantly, he could clearly feel that the crystal contained a terrifying amount of flame energy. Although it was slightly restrained, he could still feel the heat. If all the flames within were to be activated, it would definitely be able to burn everything. This is a fire origin crystal? Xiu was slightly hesitant. The fire origin crystal was a legendary treasure. It was also a natural primordial spirit treasure. 4 cultivators who cultivated fire-based cultivation methods and were proficient in fire-based Dao techniques. It was definitely a supreme treasure. With the help of this treasure, if one used all his strength to attack, he would be able to unleash a terrifying power that was 1 level higher. Even an ordinary cultivator at the peak of the primordial spirit realm would be able to unleash an attack that was comparable to the ultimate realm. Fortunately, there is no one controlling that grand formation. Otherwise, if I were to draw upon the power of the Fire Origin Essence Crystal with these Fire Origin Essence Crystals, it would not be so easy for me to break through that killing formation. Xiu's heart skipped a beat, but he did not pay too much attention to it. Unless it was a transcendent ultimate realm attack, it would be extremely difficult for it to pose a threat to him. With a flip of his hand, Xiu kept the Fire Origin Crystal. Then, without hesitation, Xiu stepped into another great formation. As soon as he entered, a terrifying pressure descended upon him once again, suppressing Xiu's strength by 30%. Then, Xiu felt an extreme chill descend upon him, causing his body to tremble slightly. Is this a world of ice and snow? Even the dense and surging immortal baleful qi carries dense icy cold qi. Xiu's expression changed slightly. He could feel a trace of frost forming on his eyebrows. At the same time, extremely sharp and tough ice arrows pierced towards Xiu like raindrop. Swoosh, swoosh. It was as if they were going to pierce through the entire space. The attack speed this time is very fast, and even the power seems to be stronger than before? Xiu silently compared himself with the true dragon black armor technique. Then, his flying sword pierced into the void like lightning. Boom, boom, boom. The true Dragon Black Armor technique was a secret Dao technique of the Dragon Clan. After Ziyue had cultivated it to perfection, its defensive power was naturally incomparably strong. Although the power of the ice arrows was dense and terrifying, and almost every attack was comparable to that of a late primordial spirit realm expert, or even a peak primordial spirit realm expert, they were blocked in front of Ziyue and could not move an inch further. Then, his flying sword pierced out. The terrifying power directly pointed at a certain spot in the void. Ziyue seemed to have coincidentally shattered a formation base hidden in the depths of the void. Immediately, he felt the pressure that enveloped him slightly weaken and weaken a little. At the same time, the large formation recovered. Spiritual light flickered everywhere, causing the surrounding formation bases to faintly flicker with a mysterious light. If it was before when the 9 formations were combined into one, I would have to put in a lot of effort to find these formation bases. But now it is indeed much easier. Ziyue thought to himself. Then, his flying sword flashed rapidly. Puff, puff, puff. Shuttling through the void, he stepped into the depths of the void from time to time and destroyed the formation bases one by one. At the same time, the power of the large formation's backlash erupted wildly with the destruction of the formation bases. Gradually, it formed a terrifying tide of ice arrows that pierced towards Ziyue. Boom, boom, boom. They fell on the defensive scales of the true dragon mysterious armor technique, causing Ziyue's body to constantly retreat. However, they were unable to cause much damage to Ziyue. The endless attacks were all blocked by the power he maintained in front of him. It was also at this moment that a figure suddenly appeared in the sky without a sound. It was a figure with a face as pale as a sheet of paper. However, there was a strange red light in its eyes. It was 3 feet tall and looked like a human. However, there were 4 claws that looked like spears on its back. They were sharp and long. There seemed to be a vertical eye on its forehead. However, it was closed at this moment. However, the slightly bulging appearance made anyone who saw it have no doubt that the vertical eye contained a terrifying power. At that moment it was standing behind Ziyue without making a sound, nor was there any fluctuation of aura. Ziyue maintained the true dragon mysterious armor technique to resist the power of the large formation. He also used the flying sword to pierce through the formation bases and destroy them one by one. Suddenly, he felt a chill in his heart. He felt an endless sense of horror in his heart. He felt as if a great disaster was about to befall him. A sense of crisis made him shudder all over. Oh no! He did not hesitate at all. He did not even have time to turn around to check. He only released his divine sense, but he did not discover anything. Although the figure seemed to appear in the void, it seemed to exist in another dimension. It could not be sensed by his divine sense at all. However, Ziyue still rushed forward instinctively. He quickly took out the Kunwu Golden Pagoda and activated it to the extreme. He even enveloped himself in it. Sizzle, a soft sound rang out, and it was accompanied by a terrifying and extremely dense immortal baleful energy that charged over. Then, Ziyue felt the Kunwu Golden Pagoda behind him shake violently. It had suffered a violent and terrifying attack. This attack was made by the figure that suddenly appeared. It made use of the spear-like claw behind it to attack. This claw seemed slow, and only a soft sound could be heard. However, when it landed on the defense of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda behind Ziyue, it was like a falling star that suddenly exploded. Boom! Clang! The Kunwu Golden Pagoda, a superior spiritual treasure, made a loud sound. Although 70% of the force was blocked by the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, 30% of the force still rushed into the Kunwu Golden Pagoda and landed on Ziyue's true dragon mysterious armor technique. Bang! With a loud bang, Ziyue activated the true dragon mysterious armor technique to its limit. However, it still collapsed slightly after a slight pause, and then it burst apart. Fortunately, after many layers of counteraction, the force of the claw was also exhausted. When it landed on Ziyue's body, it no longer posed much of a threat. What a powerful attack! Not only is it terrifying, but it is also extremely mysterious. It had even surpassed the pinnacle realm and the limits of the primordial spirit realm cultivators. It had reached a whole new level. Spirit severing stage. This is an attack at the spirit severing stage? Ziyue took a deep breath and his eyelids trembled violently. Spirit severing stage expert? Only an attack from a spirit severing stage expert could be so mysterious that the Kunwu Golden Pagoda could only block 70% of the force of the attack. His true dragon mysterious armor technique was directly shattered by the remaining 30% of the force of the attack. Although his true dragon mysterious armor technique had already suffered a violent attack and its defense was greatly reduced, it was still not something that could be shattered by an ordinary attack. It was also at this moment that Ziyue turned around and looked at the figure that suddenly appeared. His pupils shrank violently again. It's dead and there's no vitality at all. Also, the aura on its body is so strong and dense. It's more than 10 times stronger than before. Immortal corpse? This is an immortal corpse? Almost instantly, Ziyue had a guess. For some reason, he couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. What he was really afraid of this trip was actually an expert at the spirit severing stage. In his opinion, the difference in the level of cultivation was actually greater than the difference in the level of strength. Due to the difference in strength, he could rely on his defensive means and the Kunwu Golden Pagoda to block the attack. However, the difference in the level of cultivation was often reflected in the opponent's control of the same power. For example, if an attack of the spirit severing stage landed on the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, at least 80% of the force would be neutralized by the defense. Only 20% of the force would be able to penetrate the defense of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda and land on Ziyue's body. However, if it was an expert at the spirit severing stage, because of their higher level of cultivation, their control of the laws of heaven and earth would be more profound and tyrannical. Naturally, when the attack landed on the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, a stronger force would be able to penetrate the defense and land on his body. It was estimated that at least 50% of the power would land on by Ziyue's body. The higher the level of cultivation, the more profound the understanding of the laws of heaven and earth. Then, the stronger the attack that landed on Ziyue's body would be. If the legendary expert at the spirit severing stage or above made a move, he estimated that at least 80% of the attack would land on his body even if he had the protection of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda. As for this immortal corpse, perhaps in the ancient times, the other party's strength was incomparably high. It was a terrifying existence at the spirit severing stage or even the peak of the spirit severing stage. However, the other party had already fallen. Even if it was reborn, it was just an instinct. Its every move was in accordance with the great Tao, but it was only the residual shadow of the body's instinct that played a role. Therefore, although the strength of the other party's attack had reached the spirit severing stage, when the attack landed on the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, only 70% of it was blocked and neutralized. However, the threat to Ziyue was not fatal. Die! After the attack, a strong spiritual will spread out from the immortal corpse, and then it stretched out another claw. Its speed was extremely fast. Moreover, the immortal corpse was originally an ancient perfected immortal expert. The instincts contained in its body were incomparably tyrannical. Its every move was incomparably in accordance with the great Tao. Its power was incomparably terrifying, and it broke the seal of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Tao. This was a kind of unconventional method of breaking through with force. Although the immortal corpse had not reached the spirit-severing stage in terms of power, its power was too strong. It had broken through the shackles. Humph! Ziyue snorted coldly. In the beginning, because he did not immediately detect the other party's traces, He had indeed suffered a hidden loss. However, at this moment, after sensing that the other party's realm had not reached the spirit-severing stage, he was relieved and quickly reacted. He resisted the pressure of the formation and unleashed his full combat strength. He respectively used the heaven-patching technique and the great Tao Dharma form, raising his strength to the extreme. This caused his every move to contain great power. His aura was even more powerful and terrifying, as if a god had descended to the world. Then, he immediately used 1,000 miles in an instant. Chi. He dodged the immortal corpse's claws by a hair's breadth. However, the 4 sharp claws on the immortal corpse's body were not only tough and tyrannical, but they were also a part of the other party's body. They were also its weapons that had played a huge role in endless battles. After the first claw, there was no pause at all. The second claw and the third claw were stretched out again. Every move of the immortal corpse did not stop at all. It was as if it was instinctive and extremely swift. Moreover, the immortal corpse's attacks contained a terrifying invasion of immortal baleful chi. Just a trace of this immortal baleful chi was absorbed into the body, and it was a great disaster for ordinary primordial spirit cultivators. Not only would their primordial spirit be damaged, but their various techniques would also be stagnant and unable to be of use. Fortunately, Ziyue's primordial spirit was special. It was the one and only golden primordial spirit in the world. It was naturally unafraid of the interference of any immortal baleful chi and was completely indifferent. Otherwise, just this point alone would cause him to be at a disadvantage. Seeing this, Ziyue dodged repeatedly. He used 1,000 miles in an instant to the extreme, but he still felt that it was strenuous. Not only was the immortal corpse's speed not inferior to his, it was also not affected by the formation. It followed him like a shadow and charged directly in front of Ziyue. Boom! 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 At the same time, countless ice arrows descended and attacked Ziyue. Even though it wasn't much of a threat to him, these attacks still slowed him down a little. It was this delay that allowed the immortal corpse to find an opportunity to quickly reach out with its claws. This immortal corpse is really terrifying, Ziyue muttered, but his heart was extremely calm. His gaze shifted slightly and fell on the attribute panel. Consume 10 million spiritual energy. Time can be accelerated by 1 second. Accelerate. At the critical moment, Ziyue hurriedly used the power of time acceleration. In an instant, the flow of time around him increased rapidly. Not only did he barely dodge the immortal corpse's fatal attack, but he also used the opportunity to execute a series of secret technique. Great Taboo Spirit Technique, 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword, Universe in the Sleeve, Binding Tao techniques landed on the immortal corpse one after another. It was like an inescapable net that completely enveloped the immortal corpse. Following that, Ziyue unleashed a series of attacks. Heart Sword Technique, Primordial Magnetic Divine Light, 9 Extinction Divine Sword, and then he used the innate divine ability, Mind Loss, and the Primordial Spirit Attack Secret Technique, 9 Thunder Godly Destruction Seal. One attack after another was unleashed in a short period of time. It was truly swift to the extreme and fast to the extreme. However, at this point, Ziyue still did not feel safe because he knew that even if the immortal corpse's true strength was not comparable to a spirit-severing stage expert, its predecessor was after all an ancient true immortal with a deep foundation. Even the strength of its physical body was probably beyond his imagination. Therefore, in the end, he still activated the Kunwu Golden Pagoda, turned into a golden rainbow light, and blasted fiercely at the immortal corpse. Chapter 836. Chi Tao techniques quickly surged and shrouded the immortal corpse. The first technique to land on it was the Grand Forbidden Spirit Art. Even though the immortal corpse was lifeless, the immortal fiendish chi around it was the source of its power. As soon as the great forbidden spirit art landed, the immortal corpse's aura immediately withdrew and dissipated slightly. However, the immortal corpse's foundation was indeed very deep. Instinctively, its power surged, and an even more violent and intense immortal baleful chi surged out, immediately dispersing the spirit sealing light of the grand spirit sealing art. However, at this time, the 5 emperors' heaven-sealing sword and universe in the sleeve also fell. Although these 2 binding techniques were only great divine abilities, they were still very useful in Ziyue's hands. They immediately shrouded the immortal corpse and trapped it for 1,000th of a breath. Although this 1,000th of a breath was short, it was more than enough for Ziyue, who was in the state of time acceleration. His natural divine ability, daze, quickly rushed out and turned into a blurry light that entered the immortal corpse's consciousness. It immediately caused the immortal corpse, which had just broken free from the 5 emperors' heaven-sealing sword and universe in the sleeve, to pause. Then, a series of truly terrifying attacks descended. The divine essence-fused light, 9 extinction divine sword, heart sword technique, 9 thunder godly destruction technique, and the terrifying attack of the spirit treasure boom, boom, boom. The continuous attacks were terrifying to the extreme. At this moment, Ziyue really used all his techniques and raised his strength to the extreme. Endless terrifying power landed on the immortal corpse. Not only did it cause the surrounding world to be beaten into nothingness, but a large area of the world also turned into nothingness particles and completely shattered. Even the shocking great killing array that originally enveloped the surroundings seemed to be unable to withstand the impact of Ziyue's terrifying power. Sizzle sizzle sizzle, after recovering to the extreme, it finally couldn't take it anymore and shattered. Just like that, the great formation was broken. The extreme pressure that had shrouded Ziyue instantly dissipated, and the bitterly cold chi that seemed to be able to freeze everything also dissipated as if it had never appeared. "I want you dead," on the other side, the immortal corpse roared. Its incomparably strong physical body made its endurance incomparably strong. Even after suffering such a terrifying attack from Ziyue, his body did not seem to have suffered any injuries, and his aura was still as strong as before. This was especially true for the physical body that originated from an ancient true immortal. Just by standing in the void, it gave off an indescribable pressure that caused one's heart to tremble in fear. At this moment it was obviously enraged. Ever since the birth of its consciousness, it had never felt such pain. It was as if a sharp knife had pierced its brain. Even if it was unaware of the pain, it still felt a wave of fear. So strong. When Ziyue saw the other party's appearance, he felt a chill in his heart. He also felt that this was a very tricky situation. The difficulty of dealing with this immortal corpse had truly exceeded his imagination. He had used all his means. Even if each of his attacks could only erupt with the power of the extreme realm due to the restrictions of heaven and earth, he reckoned that even a true spirit-severing stage expert would have to retreat when facing him with so many means. In the end, he still couldn't do anything to this corpse that only had strength, but in terms of cultivation level, it was even inferior to his own corpse. Wait, that's not right. The physical defense of this immortal corpse may be extremely strong, but the primordial spirit, or rather the defensive power of its will, is not as strong as I imagined. Ziyue was shocked. He was already prepared to escape at any time, but suddenly his heart stirred as he sensed something unusual. This immortal corpse was not injured on the outside. Obviously, the strength of Ziyue's attack was not enough to break through the defense of his immortal corpse. This was the corpse of an ancient true immortal, who had a supreme foundation that reached the late stage of the spirit-severing stage. In addition to the refinement of the corpse formation, in terms of physical strength, Ziyue reckoned that no one in the world could be a match for the other party. However, the other party had fallen in the end. The primordial spirit dissipated, leaving behind an empty shell. Now that it had regained consciousness, it was much weaker after all. This could be seen since Ziyue's innate divine ability had caused the other party's body to stagnate. Therefore, even if Ziyue's many attacks did not cause much damage to the immortal corpse, his special attack on the primordial spirit, the 9 Thunder God-destroying technique, was definitely not useless. This could be seen from the fact that although the other party shouted fiercely, it did not immediately counterattack. Thinking of this, Ziyue's heart stirred. Without any hesitation, the power of the primordial spirit surged and quickly gathered in front of him. At the same time, his hands formed a seal and evolved an extremely complicated seal that was very compatible with the Great Tao. Zzz, as if lightning was gathering, there were suddenly many complicated seals that appeared in the void. These seals seemed to represent 9 different thunder techniques. Just by slightly revealing them, there was wind and lightning gathering until the 9 seals merged into one. Buzz. In an instant, there was an incomparably huge seal that evolved into an endless light of destruction that rushed out rapidly. Ah, die! The immortal corpse roared furiously as if it had sensed a strong sense of danger. The eyes on its forehead that were originally completely closed suddenly opened. The moment that pair of eyes opened, Yi Zichen's expression changed. In an instant, there was a dazzling pale blue light that rushed out and quickly collided with the 9 Thunder God-destroying seal. Zzzzu's 9 Thunder God-destroying seal was instantly penetrated. The pale blue light did not lose its momentum. It instantly broke through the obstruction of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda and rushed in front of Ziyue, stabbing at his primordial spirit fiercely. In front of this dazzling pale blue light, whether it was the defense of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda or the true dragon armor technique, they were completely useless. Oh no! Ziyue's expression changed greatly. He felt that a great disaster was about to befall him again. He immediately realized that the attack of the other party's vertical eye was also a rare attack of the primordial spirit realm. Moreover, it was the same as Situ Wu, the sect master of the Thousand Phenomena sect. It was a shocking combination of immortal art attacks and primordial spirit attacks. Without any hesitation, Ziyue hurriedly used the attribute panel. Use time backtrack 1 second. In an instant, he returned to 1 second ago, when the 9 Thunder God-destroying seal had just been used. Seeing that the other party's vertical eye was about to open, Ziyue hurriedly used the 1,000 miles in an instant. In a flash, he appeared beside the immortal corpse. Without the suppression of the formation, Ziyue's speed was even faster than before. After using the instant of 1,000 miles, he was truly as fast as a startled swan. Then, he stretched out his hand and instantly threw out a long staff. This staff was the heaven-startling 9-staff strike. Bang! 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 The shadows of the staff quickly turned into flowing light and smashed toward the immortal corpse. The immortal corpse also reacted quickly. The mysterious light of the vertical eye turned into a green ray and attacked Ziyue's 9 Thunder God-destroying seal. He even propped up his 4 sharp claws, which were like long spears, and went against Ziyue's shocking staff technique. Boom! 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 The long staff collided with the immortal corpse's sharp claws as if it could shatter heaven and earth. From time to time, Ziyue would use his natal flying sword to interfere and use the primary magnetic divine light and 9 extinction divine sword to maintain the attack with the immortal corpse. Occasionally, he would use the 9 Thunder God-destroying seal to attack the primordial spirit. At this time, the immortal corpse's vertical eye would open and desperately block Ziyue's 9 Thunder God-destroying seal. Ziyue knew the horror of the immortal corpse's vertical eye attack. The previous feeling of horror made him doubt that if it really landed on him, he would be severely injured. The immortal corpse was also very wary of Ziyue's primordial spirit attack and was constantly on guard, as if facing a great enemy. Therefore, the two sides were in a deadlock for a short period of time. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. It's about time to end it. After dozens of breaths, Xiue's eyes flashed with a trace of calmness. The immortal corpse was indeed very strong. In terms of strength and attack strength, it was far superior to him and had truly reached the level of the spirit-severing stage. In particular, the vertical eye's attack was probably not weaker than the full-force attack of a spirit-severing stage expert. However, the immortal corpse's newly born consciousness was at the early stage of the primordial spirit realm at best. At the middle stage of the primordial spirit realm, its attacks were a little rough. The immortal corpse was able to fight Xiue without being at a disadvantage because it was originally at the immortal realm. At this time, after dozens of breaths of battle, even though Xiue was a little strained, he had figured out the immortal corpse's strength and was really confident. He was confident that he could deal with the immortal corpse. "You're very strong. I'm willing to let you go." At this time, the immortal corpse also seemed to feel a little uneasy, especially its vertical eye. After several attacks, its power had been exhausted and it felt a stinging pain. Instinctively, a trace of fear appeared in his mind. He hurriedly sent out a spiritual wave in his consciousness. Then, he moved his body and fled into the distance. Its speed was astonishingly fast. "It's too late for you to escape now." Bai Xiue, on the other hand, was already very confident. With a low growl, he hurriedly used the attribute panel to accelerate time. 30 million soul power points can be used to accelerate time for 3 seconds. Xiue directly used 30 million soul power points to accelerate time for 3 seconds. Immediately, he unleashed all of his techniques in an extremely short period of time. Great Taboo Spirit Technique, Heaven and Earth Sleeve, 5 Emperor's Heaven Sealing Sword, 9 Extinction Divine Sword, Primary Magnetic Divine Light, Heart Sword Technique, Heaven Startling Staff Technique, Absent-Minded Divine Ability, and finally 9 Thunder God Destroying Technique. One attack after another was used. First, it was a binding technique to limit the immortal corpse's speed. Then, it used various attacks to block the immortal corpse's 4 claws. Using the absent-minded divine ability, it caused the immortal corpse to be slightly sluggish. Then, the 9 Thunder God Destroying Technique turned into a bolt of lightning and charged fiercely at the immortal corpse. Everything happened too quickly. Xiue used all his techniques. Countless techniques were used in a short period of time under the acceleration of time. The immortal corpse couldn't help but panic. It couldn't understand how the other party could use so many techniques in such a short period of time. However, the immortal corpse's instincts still forced it to take a deep breath and suddenly open its vertical eye at the critical moment. A green light immediately followed the opening of its vertical eye. It quickly met the numerous attacks and rushed towards the 9 Thunder God Destroying Seal. Chi chi chi. The attacks dissipated one after another. The 9 Thunder God Destroying Seal also rushed past the green light and turned into ashes. "You can't stop me with just these." A trace of pride flashed across the immortal corpse's consciousness. However, in the next moment its mind went blank. Then, it felt an immense pain coming from the depths of its consciousness. It was at this moment that Xiue used the 1,000 miles in a breath to dodge the attack of the immortal corpse's vertical eye. At the same time, he used the 9 Thunder God Destroying Seal again. This attack was too fast and too sudden. Coincidentally, it happened at the moment when the immortal corpse opened its vertical eye. There was no way to avoid it. The 9 Thunder God Destroying Seal poured into the immortal corpse's consciousness. Ah! A loud and miserable howl quickly came out of its mouth. The immortal corpse, which originally had a terrifying aura and astonishing strength, also paused in an instant and fell into great pain. As expected, this immortal corpse's consciousness is its biggest weakness. Even if its immortal body is strong and has an extremely strong defense against primordial spirit attacks, it still can't withstand my 9 Thunder God Destroying Seal's God Destroying Technique. Xiue relaxed and his eyes lit up. Then, in the blink of an eye, he used the second 9 thunder god-destroying seal. Then, the third, the fourth. Occasionally, Ziyue even used his innate remarkable ability to lose spirit. Numerous primordial spirit attacks poured into the immortal corpse's body, trying to wear down its consciousness. No. Stop, I am the 9 Songs Evil King, the 9 Songs Star Lord. Let me go, and I will give you the supreme inheritance, endless treasures, and tell you the secret of the treasure's descent. Under the scouring of the god-destroying light, the immortal corpse seemed to have awakened its ancient memories and emitted intense spiritual fluctuations. The 9 Songs Star Lord, the 9 Songs Evil King? The supreme inheritance, endless power, and the secret of the treasure's descent? Ziyue's heart was deeply shaken at this moment. He knew very well that 10,000 years ago, the immortals had descended because of a legendary treasure. That treasure could cause 7 true immortal experts above the late stage of the spirit-severing stage to take action. One could imagine how powerful it was. If he could know the secret and obtain a clue. Even though Ziyue's Tao heart was firm, he could not help but feel a touch of greed at this moment. Not to mention, there was also the supreme inheritance and treasures of the 9 Songs Star Lord, the 9 Songs Evil King. However, Ziyue's heart soon regained clarity, and his eyes revealed an extremely strong murderous intent. How dare you mess with my Tao heart, and almost let my murderous intent be covered in dust again. Ziyue growled and used the 9 thunder god-destroying seal again. At this moment, he was really furious. One primordial spirit attack after another, the 9 thunder god-destroying seal was continuously used, and all of them surged toward the immortal corpse, completely obliterating its consciousness. Chapter 837. The immortal corpse had been an ancient true immortal expert when he was alive, and the master of a star. His status was high and his strength was terrifying. Even though it was only his consciousness that had awakened before his death, the words of temptation that came out of his mouth naturally contained a special power that could bewitch one's mind. This power was silent and directly affected the depths of a cultivator's consciousness, causing one to be involuntarily immersed in it. It had a great influence on him, and in terms of temptation, it was many times stronger than that of Fairy Hume, the palace master of the closed moon immortal palace. Therefore, Ziyue could not help but be tempted at that moment, and greed rose in his heart. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, his golden primordial spirit glowed faintly. His perfect and transparent soul had a strong resistance to this kind of temptation, and he woke up in time. Otherwise, once he really aroused greed in his heart and aroused the thought of seizing that inheritance treasure and obtaining the secrets of that legendary treasure, then he would surely have the thought of letting go of this immortal corpse. At this critical moment when he wanted to subdue his killing intent and allow his mental cultivation to rise to a higher level, it could be said that there would be no end to his troubles in the future. Not only would his murderous heart be covered in dust, his mental cultivation would also deteriorate, and all his previous efforts would be in vain. If he wanted to comprehend and subdue his murderous heart again, the difficulty would be many times greater than before. Fortunately, Ziyue woke up in time and struck out several 9 lightning god-destroying seals in succession. Chi! 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 It turned into a terrifying destructive force of the thunder god, destroying the will of the immortal corpse. No, following a furious roar, the immortal corpse that had been emitting a strong mental energy fluctuation completely fell silent. The immortal corpse was dead. Huff huff, this immortal corpse's strength is indeed extremely strong. Not only are his attacks strong enough to surpass the level of the Supreme Realm, even his speed is not inferior to mine. If it wasn't for the fact that his soul and will were far weaker than mine, it would be hard to predict who would win. Ziyue looked at the immobile immortal corpse and could not help but secretly sigh in relief. Of course, he would not let his guard down completely because of this. He then looked at his attribute panel. The death of the immortal corpse would naturally give birth to spiritual energy. In his opinion, as long as his spiritual energy increased, it would naturally mean that the immortal corpse had died. Then, he was stunned. How is this possible? 2 strands. On his status panel, there were actually 2 additional spirit energy increases. One of them was relatively small, with only a little over 50 million points. It was only slightly more than an average mid-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator. It was comparable to the amount of spiritual energy that a late-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator would gain after his death. However, the other one was extremely large, reaching a total of 1.3 billion, an increase of 1.3 billion units of soul power, and it's just 1. Normally, when a Lemeter dies, the increase in soul power is between 9,000 and 100 million unit. That means that only a Lemeter who is in the middle or late stage of the severed divinity stage can achieve 1.3 billion units of soul power. Muttering in his heart, Zue couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Could it be that a powerhouse at the late stage of the spirit severing stage just happened to fall at this time, and not far from me? Or... Zue muttered, and then couldn't help but look at the immortal corpse. He could not help but have a guess in his heart. Combined with the scene during the battle, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was very likely to be the truth. Could it be that the true body of this immortal corpse did not actually fall in the ancient battle 10,000 years ago? It was only because the injuries were too severe that the primordial spirit was almost destroyed and dissipated, which created the illusion that it had already fallen. The true soul of the other party had actually been hidden in the endless depths of the immortal corpse, recuperating and waiting for an opportunity to recover and be resurrected. It was also because of this that the other party's corpse was found by another perfected immortal expert, who set up a corpse-nurturing array in this dragon vein and refined it into an immortal corpse. After 10,000 years of refinement, the immortal corpse gave birth to a new soul and will. Therefore, after I destroyed the other party's soul and will, there were 2 full waves of spiritual energy increase, and one of the waves of spiritual energy increase was extremely rich. Ziua's eyes flickered, and he couldn't help but be shocked by his own guess. In fact, experts at the spirit severing stage, especially experts at the late stage of the spirit severing stage like the Lord of Nine Songs Star and the Evil King of Nine Songs, did indeed have the possibility of separating a primordial spirit particle and being reborn. The spirit severing stage, wasn't it separating the will of the primordial spirit? All of this is really frightening to think about. However, this is not necessarily a bad thing for me. After accidentally killing a late-stage spirit-severing stage expert, Zue was also surprised, but he couldn't help but feel a little proud in his heart. A late-stage spirit-severing stage expert. If he was at his peak, he could probably crush him to death with a casual point. In the end, because of this accident, he was killed by him. Most importantly, after the other party died, the amount of spiritual energy that he received was too much. It was the most he had gained since he started cultivating. It really made him more excited than eating an immortal fruit. After all, no matter what, he was an existence who had gone against the odds and killed a late-stage spirit-severing stage perfected immortal. Even if he said it out loud, no one would believe it. As for the consequences, Zue wasn't afraid at all. From the moment he decided to step into the land of the fallen immortal and break the corpse-nurturing formation, he knew what he was about to face. Immortal corpse? Spirit-severing stage expert? They were all among the opponents he had expected. For this, he had also made all the necessary preparations. At this moment, he really encountered the immortal corpse and killed it. Especially when he took the opportunity to kill the main soul of the immortal corpse and the ancient perfected immortal expert, the impact on Zue was incomparably strong, causing him to involuntarily feel a surge of emotions in his heart. So what if it's a perfected immortal expert? If it's dead, it's dead. To me, there's no one in the world that I can't kill. His heroism reached the clouds, and a strong sense of control was born from the bottom of his heart. His mental cultivation also soared, and at this moment, his eyes were extremely clear. As he looked around, he felt that all things were growing and the world was beautiful. The countless doubts that had plagued his mind, the countless mysteries of heaven and earth that were still difficult to comprehend, the power of the Tao laws that were constantly floating and circulating between heaven and earth, were like looking at flowers in a fog, unable to be seen clearly, and the little creations everywhere were incomparably clear in his eyes at this moment. My mental cultivation has broken through. I've reached the realm of the enlightened sword heart, and all things are no longer stagnant. Naturally, I've also completely subdued the originally unpredictable killing intent. Ziyue originally thought that he would be incomparably overjoyed and reveal a moved smile. However, at this moment, he seemed incomparably calm, as if everything had always been like this and should be like this. And it was also the moment his mental cultivation broke through and he completely subdued the killing intent. The heaven-breaking Tao technique that had troubled him for a long time, and he couldn't completely comprehend and create it, also quickly took shape at this moment. The heaven-breaking Tao technique has also been truly created. This is a secret technique that belongs to me alone, and it completely combines my own unique advantages. It combines my physical body, Yuan Li, soul, primordial spirit, and many other powers perfectly. In one attack, not only does it contain the power of blood qi, but it also contains the power of material attacks and primordial spirit attack. Furthermore, the various powers complemented each other perfectly. Once it's unleashed, even if the opponent's strength is extraordinary and his defensive methods are shocking, it'll be difficult for him to defend against the killing power of the primordial spirit attack, and it'll definitely be difficult for him to defend against the impact of the blood qi attack. Not to mention, the combination of the three powers and the regeneration of creation almost surpasses the limits of what primordial spirit cultivators can control. Ziyue's heart trembled, and he was completely immersed in the new heaven-breaking Tao technique that he had created. In the end, he was a little moved, and he was amazed. Perfect. Too perfect. At least with Ziyue's current strength, he estimated that it would be extremely difficult for him to create another secret technique like this. This heaven-breaking Tao technique combines the three powers into one. It's like the manifestation of Tao laws and the incarnation of the great Tao. It's perfect and flawless. In that case, I shall name it the Great Tao Coalescence Technique. Bai Ziyue immediately came up with a name for the Tao art he had invented. The Great Tao Coalescence Technique was a special kind of power augmentation technique. It could be used to attack with swordsmanship, such as the Heart Sword technique. It could also be used with any attack techniques, such as the Heavenly Staff technique, the Nine Thunder God Destroying technique, the Primordial Magnet Divine Light, the Nine Extinction Godly Sword, and so on. It was impossible to defend against, and its power was boundless. Since this heaven-breaking Tao technique, the Great Tao Coalescence Technique, has been created. In that case, I want to see if my attack has really broken through the suppression of heaven and earth, and the seal of the Great Tao. I want to see if I can really unleash an attack that surpasses the limits of the primordial spirit realm. Ziyue had been looking forward to this for a long time. When he had just broken through to the initial stage of the primordial soul realm, he had already felt a kind of suppression and restraint. Under the influence of heaven and earth, he could not fully unleash his power. At most, he could only unleash an attack at the level of the extreme realm. In the beginning, it was still fine. When he was in the initial stage of the primordial soul realm, his attack techniques were actually just barely at the level of the extreme realm. Although this suppression and restraint existed, it was not obvious. However, when he broke through to the intermediate stage of the primordial soul realm, after his breakthrough, his power soared, but he could only unleash an attack at the level of the extreme realm. This made him extremely uncomfortable. After going through so much and spending so much time and effort, he had finally integrated himself and created a heaven-breaking Tao technique that could surpass the level of the extreme realm. Naturally, he wanted to give it a try. The Great Tao Coalescence Technique was a secret technique that he had created himself. Naturally, he did not need to go through the initial stages of cultivation to be able to use it skillfully. At this moment, he activated the Great Tao Coalescence Technique. The aura in his body suddenly surged. His blood, qi, origin energy, and soul all surged. Under the activation of this special technique, the three forces combined and turned into a special white aura that resembled liquid mercury. Then, with a thought, he poured all of this special aura into the flying sword. Immediately after, he activated the heart sword technique and used the mystery of the heart sword technique to unleash this attack. Qi. Fast. 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 Too fast. The flying sword was like silver, but it disappeared in the blink of an eye. As if there was no gap in time, it appeared in the void 80,000 feet away and pierced deeply. Poof! It was as if a golden needle had pierced a balloon. A terrifying power exploded out, causing the surrounding space to rapidly collapse and spread out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A series of extremely complex and mysterious talismans suddenly rose from the place where the flying sword landed, and they were immediately activated to the extreme. However, it was useless. Ziyue's attack directly shattered the array formation and turned it into nothingness. This attack is so strong. It's several times stronger than any of my previous attacks, reaching an unimaginable level. Most importantly, this attack made me feel incomparably refreshed and carefree. The suppression and seal that had been surrounding me and shrouding me in attacks has finally been completely shattered. This attack has surpassed the level of the limiter. It has truly reached a new, higher level. Ziyue took a deep breath. His blood and soul were excited, and he felt incomparably happy. The pinnacle realm is a realm that only the pinnacle experts of the star boundary can reach. In the entire star boundary, there are only 11 or 12 of them. Perhaps there are some hidden ones, but there are definitely not many. And among these 11 or 12 pinnacle experts, only 2 have broken through the suppression of heaven and earth and the seal of the Great Tao, and can unleash an attack that surpasses the pinnacle realm. These 2 people are the 9-star Tao Palace's Sun Batong and the Great Tao Business Alliance's Li Fatian. They are also recognized as the 2 strongest supreme experts in the world. But now, there will be one more person in the star boundary who can break through the suppression of heaven and earth and the seal of the Great Tao, and that is myself. Ziyue's thoughts spun, and he could not help but feel a sense of comparison. He was not sure if his offensive methods and strength were stronger than Sun Batong and Li Fatian's. After all, he had not really seen these 2 people in action, so it was naturally difficult to find out. However, when he unleashed this attack, he actually vaguely understood that his current strength was absolutely beyond imagination. He did not fear ordinary early-stage spirit-severing experts at all. At least with his current strength and methods, if he fought with the immortal corpse again, he would not need to expend much effort to suppress the other party and completely obliterate the other party's soul and will. Ziyue was full of confidence. Not to mention, the Great Tao Convergence technique he used at this moment was only at the beginner stage. It only had the effect of integrating power, subduing Tao laws, and breaking through the shackles of the pinnacle realm. What was unleashed was actually the original power of the flying sword. If he could raise the Great Path Convergence technique to perfection, Ziyue reckoned that his strength would definitely soar again and become even more powerful. It just so happens that my current spiritual power is also very sufficient. The more than 600 million spiritual power from before and the 150 million spiritual power this time have directly caused my spiritual power to soar to 2 billion spiritual power. Ziyue glanced at the attribute panel, and a trace of anticipation appeared on his face. Chapter 838. 2 billion points of spiritual energy was not a small amount. Even if it was a drop in the bucket compared to his original estimate of 20 billion points of spiritual energy, it was enough to increase his strength by a large margin. Now, including the Great Path Coalescence technique, I have a total of 3 secret techniques that require the help of spiritual energy. They are the Origin Technique, the Great Yuan Spirit Scripture, the Physical Secret Technique, the Heaven Staff Technique, and the Great Path Coalescence Technique. The Great Yuan Spirit Scripture will increase my Immortal Technique realm. My cultivation is now at the Intermediate Primordial Spirit realm. Only by increasing it to the Advanced Primordial Spirit realm can my strength be considered to have improved greatly. However, the amount of spiritual energy needed to increase from the Intermediate Primordial Spirit realm to the Advanced Primordial Spirit realm is too much. 4 billion points of spiritual energy is not enough. Even if I increase my Immortal Technique realm to the Advanced Primordial Spirit realm, my strength will advance to an unimaginable level. Even if I did not create the Great Path Coalescence Technique, I can still rely on the immense and terrifying strength of the Advanced Primordial Spirit realm to break through the suppression of heaven and earth and the seal of the Great Path. Ziyue could not help but shake his head as he thought about it. In fact, he had already guessed that when his strength reached a certain level, it would be difficult for heaven and earth to completely suppress him and would be shattered by him. In his opinion, the Advanced Primordial Spirit realm was already at a level where he could break through the suppression of heaven and earth. Even if his state of mind was slightly weaker and his understanding of the laws of heaven and earth was slightly weaker, his immense strength would be enough to make up for it. Unfortunately, 4 billion points of spiritual energy was too much for him. It was not an amount that could be gathered in a short period of time. Therefore, he did not set this as a goal from the beginning. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. He managed to subdue his murderous intent as he wished, and his state of mind improved greatly. This allowed him to successfully create the heaven-breaking Tao technique, and he also used it to truly break through the suppression of heaven and earth and the seal of the Great Path. As for the Heaven Staff Technique, this Heaven Staff Technique is definitely a supreme secret technique created by an expert of the Immortal Path above the Spirit Severing stage. Just the 9 staff strikes of the Heaven Shocking Staff Technique was already comparable to a supreme Taoist technique. It allowed me to unleash the power of the Lamita realm. The Heaven Shocking 3 staff strikes and the Heaven Shocking single staff strike were even stronger and more powerful. However, even though the startling Heaven Staff Technique was powerful, it was still incomplete. If I want to improve it, I have to complete the Heaven Startling 3 strikes. Just completing the Heaven Startling 3 strikes requires 1.28 billion points of spiritual energy. If I want to upgrade it to perfection, I'll need another 1.28 billion points. Adding it all up, I'll need 2.56 billion points. I'm still a long way off. Ziyue's gaze landed on the heaven-shocking 3-rod strikes on his stats window. He quickly shook his head and said softly, as expected, the increase in my abilities still depends on this newly created Great Tao Convergence technique. Besides, this Heaven Breaker Taoist technique is a mystic technique that can completely fuse my strength into one. Once it reaches perfection, the increase in my strength will be substantial. Of course, the most important thing was that Ziyue had discovered that the amount of spiritual energy required to upgrade the Great Path Convergence technique didn't exceed his limit. By consuming 1.9 billion points of soul energy, the Heaven Breaker Taoist technique of Great Tao Convergence can be upgraded from novice to perfection. 1. 9 billion points of soul energy, that's quite a lot. But to me, as long as it can increase my abilities, so what if it's more? Not to mention, this Great Path Convergence technique is a mystic technique that I created based on my own situation. It's a mystic technique that completely suits me and can unleash my abilities to the greatest extent. Once it's upgraded to perfection, it'll definitely increase my abilities to the extreme. Although the consumption of 9 billion points of soul energy made Ziyue a little reluctant, he also understood that it was all worth it. In the immortal spell world, only strength could reign supreme. Not to mention, the area he was in right now wasn't considered safe. Although the immortal corpse had been dealt with, there was still no trace of the legendary perfected immortal powerhouse. Once he encountered him, he wouldn't be safe with his current abilities. Upgrade. Thinking of this, Ziyue didn't hesitate and immediately chose to upgrade. In an instant, a vast amount of cultivation experience, insights, and understanding regarding the Great Path Convergence technique rapidly poured into his mind. He seemed to have gone through tens of thousands of years of tireless cultivation to raise this heaven-breaking Taoist technique to the perfected realm. The Great Path Convergence technique has been perfected. As expected, after perfection, with the help of the Great Path Convergence technique, the power of the three forces combined changed again. Not only did it become more solid and tyrannical, even the structure of the power was much more compact, as if it had a life of its own. It could evolve and change, causing the birth of dead wood, or turn into a light of destruction, wantonly destroying all existence. And this mystic technique really suits me very well. Under perfection, it actually led to a small improvement in my immortal spell realm. The circulation of my primordial spirit, qi, and blood is also a little faster than before. As for the immortal spell realm, if calculated in terms of soul energy consumption, it saved me at least 100 million points of soul energy consumption. Ziyue couldn't help but be overjoyed. This kind of situation was unprecedented in the past. 100 million points of soul energy wasn't much for Ziyue now, but it definitely wasn't little either. As for my abilities, the improvement is even greater. Although I don't know exactly what level I'm at because there's no comparison, I estimate that I'm at least 2 levels stronger than before. Ziyue thought to himself. Then, he looked at the remaining great formations in the land of the fallen immortals. Although the immortal corpse had been killed by him, he naturally couldn't let the corpse-nurturing ground continue to exist and affect the recovery of the dragon vein. With a thought, the Great Path Convergence technique was used. The North Sea Flying Sword immediately turned into a ray of flowing light and rushed out. At the same time, Ziyue also used the Primordial Magnetic Divine Light, the 9 Extinction Divine Sword, and then the Heaven-Startling Staff technique. They respectively bombarded the remaining great formations. Boom, boom, boom. Heaven and earth exploded. Endless spiritual light rose, and then, after recovering to the extreme, collapsed instantly, turning into ruins and dust. These supreme killing formations that were originally incomparably powerful and could kill peak primordial spirit realm cultivators. Even supreme realm cultivators had to be careful when facing them. Otherwise, there was a risk of death. But now, they were all turned into ruins and completely destroyed. Soon, the 9 great formations were all destroyed by him. The corpse-nurturing ground formation that originally sat on the dragon vein was also destroyed and removed by him. Suddenly, endless and rich immortal evil qi spread out in all directions like seawater. Gradually, strands of dragon court ancestral qi began to spread out from the depths of the ground. This dragon court ancestral qi contained endless vitality. It was like the embodiment of the Great Path, constantly nourishing the surrounding heaven and earth and repairing the earth vein that had been contaminated by the corpse-nurturing ground formation for thousands of years. It's a pity that although the corpse-nurturing ground formation has been destroyed, the impact it caused can't be eliminated in a short time. If it develops normally, it will take at least 100 years to clean up the contamination. The dragon vein will really start to nourish the earth veins all over the ancient barren region and repair the damage of the original dragon vein and earth vein. It will take at least 100 years. Zeus sighed in his heart. There was nothing he could do in a short time. Although he was powerful, it was impossible for him to revive the dragon vein in a short time. Either he cut off the dragon veins from other realms and planted them in the dragon veins of the ancient desolate region, which would allow him to recover quickly, or he would spend hundreds of years and thousands of years of hard work to sort out the earth energy of the underground spirit veins bit by bit. Regardless of which method he chose, Zeus was not willing to make the decision easily. However, even with such a commotion, no one has come. It seems that the legendary spirit severing stage cultivator is not here? Zeus scanned the surrounding situation and frowned slightly. However, he could not help but secretly heave a sigh of relief. If possible, he naturally did not want to encounter an unfamiliar powerful cultivator, not to mention that it was very likely that the other party was a true immortal who had participated in the earth-shattering battle 10,000 years ago. Then, Zeus began to tidy up the spoils of war. Because of the violent destruction of the formation, many of the formation bases had been destroyed. Only some of the formation eyes were very sturdy and of high quality. Most of them were very intact and their value was naturally very high. The weakest one was a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure. Among them, there were even a few special treasures like the fire essence crystals, whose value was above that of supreme-grade primordial spirit treasures. However, what really moved Zeus was the formation eyes of the corpse land formation formed by the combination of the 9 formations. This was an ancient war chest set. On the war chest set, there was still a pool of fresh blood floating on it. It was as if it had just dripped onto the war flag. And as the war flag fluttered, a frighteningly strong and terrifying immortal chi could not help but spread out from it. This immortal chi was all attached to the war flag. As the war flag fluttered slightly, it pressed down on the void and the earth, causing a trembling sound. Demonic treasure, another demonic treasure. Moreover, the grade of this demonic treasure is at least middle grade. It might even be a high-grade demonic treasure. Zeus' expression changed as he carefully got closer. The moment he grabbed the war banner, the battle banner in his hand changed. Roar. A deafening roar sounded. Then, Zeus sensed that in the vast starry sky, countless cultivators were madly fighting, causing the stars to shatter and the starry sky to be dyed in blood. It was an extremely tragic scene. And this war flag had drunk the blood of countless experts. Then, in the hands of a foreign race expert, it was like a long spear as it fought fiercely with a giant beast. This battle caused the heavens to shatter and the earth to shatter. Then, as the foreign race expert let out a low roar, the war flag pierced through the giant beast. The endless blood of the star beast dyed the war flag bright and glistening. After this battle, the war flag seemed to have undergone a special transformation. The drops of blood seemed to have given birth to a creation, condensing into a shocking blood chi. Just the aura was revealed, and it was vast for thousands of miles. Then, it turned into a ray of dim light and rushed out. Finally, it turned illusory and real and rushed directly towards Zeus. However, Zeus' soul was pure and the primordial spirit that he had formed was the one and only golden primordial spirit in the world. It was naturally extremely strong against all kinds of infernal chi. When the infernal chi rushed into Zeus' body, it was like a gentle breeze that did not affect Zeus at all. In fact, when Zeus' primordial spirit revolved, it actually refined the immortal chi that rushed towards him. It is indeed a high-grade demonic treasure, a top weapon that is comparable to a high-grade spiritual treasure. That immortal chi is only because my soul is special and I am not afraid of it. If it was an ordinary primordial spirit cultivator, he would probably be washed away, and controlled by the infernal chi and turned into a walking corpse. Once his strength is slightly weaker, he would be invaded by the infernal chi in a single move. His primordial spirit would be completely destroyed and he would be turned into ashes and perish. Ziyue murmured. With a thought, he held the war flag tightly, and it did not dare to move. When he was still in the golden core stage, he was not afraid of being invaded by the demonic treasure's infernal chi. He could walk freely in the infernal chi. Now that his immortal techniques had improved, even if the demonic treasure in his hand was of a higher grade and the infernal chi that it carried was more terrifying, Ziyue was not afraid at all. When he was invaded by the infernal chi, it was as easy as a gentle breeze. Then, his primordial spirit revolved and he took the opportunity to put away the war flag that he had already subdued. The war flag was of a very high grade. Not only did it innately possess immortal chi, the fresh blood on it was also very extraordinary. Ziyue planned to refine this demonic treasure when he had the time and make it his own weapon. Even if it was not suitable for him, using the war flag as a staff and displaying shocking staff techniques would not be any weaker than using other immortal treasures. Not to mention, the staff shadow contained immortal chi. Any enemy who saw it would be much more cautious. Finally, it's this immortal corpse. The corpse of an ancient true immortal expert. If he was at his peak, he would probably not be any weaker than the expert who killed the giant beast in the image just now. His corpse also contains endless great Tao and the truths of heaven and earth. It will definitely be beneficial to my immortal techniques cultivation. I should take him away too. Perhaps he will be of some use. Ziyue's primordial spirit swept past and carefully probed the body of the immortal corpse. He could not penetrate deep into the corpse at all and could only examine its outer appearance. However, the immortal corpse's outer appearance was indignant, but it seemed to be formed by endless Tao laws, forming an extremely mysterious power that was extremely tough. It's no wonder that my powerful attack didn't cause much damage to it. Its physical defense is really invincible. Ziyue muttered and could not help but compare it with his own physical body. Even if the cultivation system was different, it was a fact that he was inferior to the immortal corpse in terms of pure power usage. He naturally wanted to explore and learn. Soon, he made some discoveries. From the structure of some Tao laws, he found that when the spirit and flesh were combined, there would be a special spiritual power effect that was extremely effective in increasing the physical strength of a cultivator. Involuntarily, Ziyue's primordial spirit power flowed and sketched according to this unique Tao law structure. Indeed, he felt a special numbness in his flesh and blood. It was as if he had obtained a special kind of training and strengthening in the depths of his physical particles. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, this change was very subtle, but it was real. Most importantly, it required a lot of energy to maintain the sketching. Therefore, Ziyue only maintained it for a while before stopping. Chapter 839. Ziyue estimated that if he wanted to reach the level of invincible physical body like the immortal corpse, he would need at least hundreds or thousands of years of hard work. It would be better to cultivate the cultivation method he had created, the Grand Primordial Spirit Scripture. After all, the Grand Primordial Spirit Scripture was the cultivation method he had created that was most suitable for him. Cultivating the spirit, flesh, and primordial spirit together complemented each other. Once his immortal technique realm improved, his physical strength would naturally improve as well, which would be more suitable for him. Of course, the Tao law contained in the immortal corpse was indeed extremely profound. It was a complete manifestation of the Tao law, which would be of great help to him. Next, he would naturally spend some time observing and cultivating, using this opportunity to improve his strength and foundation. But now was not the time. Now that the corpse-nurturing formation in the land of the fallen immortals has been destroyed by me, the immortal evil chi that shrouded the land will naturally dissipate over time and be replaced by the ancestral chi of the dragon court gushing out from the underground dragon vein. Perhaps it won't take long for the environment of this land to change from the original land of death to a spiritual land, an immortal land, or even a holy land. In this way, all my efforts will not be in vain. Ziue felt an inexplicable surge of emotions and a sense of accomplishment. He did not need others to thank him. He came to the land of the fallen immortals because he thought that as the first person in the world to walk out of the ancient barren domain, he should and must do something for the ancient barren domain. Now that he had finally achieved something, he naturally felt at ease. And for an immortal technique cultivator, peace of mind was even rarer. It made his state of mind and cultivation slowly improve, and his primordial spirit became clearer and brighter, untainted by anything. Next, Ziue pondered for a moment. I'm not far from the ancient barren domain now. Why don't I go there and see how the ancient barren domain has changed? It had been 7 or 8 years since he came out of the ancient barren domain. He missed it and wanted to see the mountains and rivers, the scenery, the familiar people. Even though the mountains and rivers were not as magnificent as the firmament territory, it was his hometown and the place where he was born. Even though he had left, he still couldn't bear to part with his loved ones. With this thought in mind, Ziue no longer hesitated. With his heart set on returning home, his figure flashed as he directly used the 1,000 miles in a breath technique. In an instant, his figure was like a stream of light as he rushed into the distance. Sizzle, right at this moment, a spatial rift suddenly erupted in front of Ziue, and it was like an enormous net that practically enveloped a large expanse of the heavens and the earth. Humph! Ziue's expression did not change. At the same time when the space crack exploded, a flying sword had already rushed out in front of him. It was like a flowing light, directly hitting the shocking giant net. Boom! Heaven and earth fell silent. This incomparably stable space that had existed for countless years in this world. As for the spatial rift that stretched across the sky like a giant net, it suddenly shattered and turned into mesons of nothingness. It also revealed a pitch-black space that contained chaotic and terrifying spatial turbulence. The spatial crack was completely shattered. Even the space in the land of the fallen immortals, which was several times more stable than the outside world, was shattered. Naturally, the spatial crack no longer existed. This space began to reorganize under the power of heaven and earth, and it began to recover bit by bit. However, Ziue's power was too strong. Even with the help of the power of heaven and earth, it took almost a month for the space to regain its stability. At this time, Ziue had already turned into a stream of light and disappeared. I've finally arrived at the ancient barren region. Ziue looked into the distance at the mountains and rivers. Even though the surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth was extremely thin for him at this moment, if he inhaled and exhaled with all his might, he would probably be able to absorb all the spiritual chi within a range of 10,000 miles in a breath. However, he felt an inexplicable sense of closeness, as if he had returned home with happiness. However, Ziue soon saw the sky curtain that enveloped the entire ancient barren region. In fact, this sky curtain was known to all the major sects in the ancient barren region. When he had walked out of the ancient barren region and stepped into the 100,000 Great Mountain, he had already sensed the existence of this sky curtain that isolated heaven and earth. This sky curtain that isolated heaven and earth could only be exited and not entered. The more powerful one was, the stronger the suppression when entering and exiting the sky curtain. Back then, he had guessed that this sky curtain must have been set up by some peerless almighty expert. As for what the specific plan was, he had no way of guessing. This time, when he entered the ancient barren region, he also had the idea of understanding this great array in detail. After all, his current array Dao strength was not weak. The ancient barren region was his hometown, so he naturally did not want to see anyone do something that would be detrimental to the ancient barren region. At this moment, looking at this great array, Ziyue's expression changed, and a sense of horror arose in his heart. A sixth-grade great array. This was already the second sixth-grade great array that he had encountered. Another thing worth mentioning was that this great array was much more advanced than the corpse-nurturing great array in the ancient barren battlefield. It was an advanced sixth-grade great array. As he approached and sensed it, even Ziyue felt a faint sense of threat in his heart. The power of this great array is so strong. Not to mention primordial soul realm cultivators, even extreme realm cultivators, and even mighty immortal experts of the spirit-severing realm and above, would not dare to touch it at all. This is because once they touch it and enter, they will trigger a backlash from the great array and explode with a terrifying attack. Ziyue could not help but be amazed. The deeper one went in the array Dao, the more one could feel the power and exquisiteness of this great array, as well as its perfect harmony with heaven and earth. This was a higher-level use of array Dao, and any cultivator who wanted to achieve something in the array Dao would feel a sense of infatuation when they saw it. Ziyue also felt the beauty of this great array, but he was actually more analyzing the function of this great array and whether it would cause any harm to the ancient barren region. This great array is a type of protective array Dao. It only protects the outside and not the inside. If outside cultivators want to enter, once they are too strong, they will be attacked by the great array Dao. On the contrary, the weaker the cultivator, the less the threat they will face. And this great array Dao does not have any restrictions on the people of the ancient barren region within the great array Dao. They can enter and leave freely. Ziyue secretly heaved a sigh of relief, and then a serious expression appeared on his face. If he wanted to enter the ancient barren region, he would also have to pass through this great array Dao. And most importantly, he wanted to know who the person who set up this great array Dao was. Was it the person who set up the great array Dao in the land of the fallen immortals in the ancient barren battlefield, or was it someone else? A grade 6 array master was probably not common outside the astral realm. 10,000 years ago, when the 7 perfected immortal experts descended, the possibility of there being 2 grade 6 array masters was also very small. And if the person who set up this great array Dao was the same person who set up the great array Dao in the land of the fallen immortals, then there would be no lack of a battle between them. Even though Ziyue was now much stronger than before and had completely broken through the seal of heaven and earth and the suppression of the great Dao, he did not dare to be too confident. After all, the other party was a top existence who could dominate the world since ancient times. Even the weakest one was at the level of a star lord like the immortal corpse, or even stronger, however, since I'm already here, it's not my style to not give it a try. It's also good to see if this great array Dao is really as strong as I imagined. If that person is really an enemy and not a friend, even if I'm not strong enough, I'll still break his teeth. Ziyue thought to himself, and a trace of determination flashed across his eyes. The primordial spirit power in his body surged, and he used many techniques, including the Great Dao Coalescence technique and the True Dragon Armor technique. He even took out the superior grade Kunwu Golden Pagoda to raise its defensive power to the maximum. Then, he began to approach carefully. 10,000 meters, 1,000 meters, 100 meters. The closer he got, the more Ziyue felt the power of the great barrier that isolated heaven and earth. Nevertheless, when Ziyue was 10 meters away from the formation, even though he still felt a faint sense of threat, the big formation did not really activate. Just like before, it still existed in the void and did not move at all. When the breeze blew, it did not obstruct it at all, as if it did not exist. Ziyue gritted his teeth and continued to approach. 5 meters, 4 meters, 3 meters outside Ziyue's body, the defensive light of the Kunwu Golden Pagoda and the true dragon armor technique had already come into contact with the Great Barrier, but he still did not feel any repulsive force. Then, naturally, Zeus stepped in. Heaven and earth were calm and peaceful. Everything was the same as before. What's going on? I'm not being obstructed at all? Or is this great array Tao no longer working? Zeus was a little puzzled. He did not think that he was a very special existence. Thinking of this, he seemed to have thought of something. With a thought, he stretched out his hand. A huge palm print suddenly formed in heaven and earth. The palm print extended along the Great Barrier and reached out from the ancient barren region, directly grabbing a mountain dozens of kilometers away. Roar! A furious roar rang out, and a black bear that was 80 feet long with a robust and tall body was grabbed by the palm. It slowly charged toward the sky. This was a great demon that had just broken through to the early Golden Core realm and was a demon king expert in the surrounding 800 kilometers. However, in Zeus's hands, it was like a quail that could not move at all. In the end, it could only whimper and tremble. By Zeus's strength was too strong. Each and every one of his movements contained great power. Not to mention that it had just advanced to the early Golden Core realm. Even a great demon in the early primordial soul realm would be powerless in Zeus's hands. Then, it saw the place where its palm had reached out and it was about to charge into. Its eyes, which had already been frightened, were immediately filled with panic, and it could not help but wail. However, Zeus's expression did not change. He grabbed it and threw it into the Great Barrier. Buzz! The Great Barrier recovered, and a terrifying force gathered, instantly turning into a golden ray of light. Chi. The golden ray instantly pierced the huge black bear and its entire body. The huge bear also fell and slid to the ground, staining the ground red with blood. As expected, this formation is still working. But why did it only let me go? Zeus was puzzled. It did not make sense to say that it was afraid of him because of his strength. He could feel the power of the entire Great Barrier. It was a place that even an expert in the separating divinity realm had to face with caution and did not dare to step into easily. Although he was confident that his strength was not weaker than an ordinary expert in the separating divinity realm, he was only in the middle primordial soul realm. Or is it because I was born in the ancient barren region? Zeus guessed, but he did not know the reason. Then, he did not delve too deeply into it. With a move, he went deep into the ancient barren region. Along the way, he fully activated his divine sense. The people, objects, conversations, and even the thoughts of the people he passed by, all kinds of secret information gathered in his mind in the blink of an eye and were taken shape by him. Now, only 6 of the 7 major immortal cultivation sects are left. The Gu God sect is finally completely extinct. Now, the Chaoyang sect is the most powerful sect in the ancient barren region. Not only have a few people reached the God realm, but the sect master of the Chaoyang sect also broke through and reached the late God realm. He is the most powerful person in the world. Among the younger generation, there are a few extremely talented cultivators. Their strength is the best of the generation, and they are called the 7 sons of the Chaoyang sect. It is said that the strongest one has begun to accumulate strength to reach the God realm. The ancient barren region is not peaceful now. It is said that in the far west there is a secret cave. That secret cave is connected to a mysterious place. Often, there are external demons stepping into the ancient barren region and wantonly destroying the surroundings. Now, all the major immortal cultivation sects have sent experts to guard that place. It is said that there are countless casualties. Among the rogue cultivators, there is a person who calls himself Saint Lord Jinfa. He claims to be the successor of a genuine immortal and is extremely powerful. It is said that he is only in the early stage of the Enlightenment realm, but he has suppressed 3 experts in the late stage of the Enlightenment realm. His strength can be said to be invincible in the same realm. He is almost as powerful as the invincible Kunlun Taoist a few years ago. Kunlun Taoist? Speaking of which, there has been no news about Kunlun Taoist for a long time. Some people say that he has died long ago. Others say that he has left the ancient barren region and stepped into the outer region. But no matter what, he is indeed the most talented expert in our ancient desolate region in the past tens of thousands of years. Through the conversations and information, Ziyue knew the situation in the ancient barren region like the back of his hand, but he knew almost half of it. The Chaoyang sect has become the #1 sect in the ancient barren region. However, the sect leader is only in the late stage of the god realm. He may be powerful in the ancient barren region, but in the firmament territory, he is too weak. I reckon that any expert from a small sect would be able to suppress it. Ziyue shook his head and sighed. Compared to the firmament territory, the number and strength of the experts in the ancient barren region were really too weak. Ziyue estimated that it would take at least 10,000 years, or even more than 10,000 years, to catch up. But the secret cave? Soon, Ziyue's face showed a trace of seriousness. Chapter 840. Secret Cave? It's connected to a mysterious place. Often, outer demons use this place to enter the ancient barren region. Could it be that this secret cave is also one of the connecting passages between the demon realm and the star realm? Ziyue's heart tightened, and he could not help but frown deeply. He had long known that when the great calamity of the star boundary descended, it would overlap with the devil world in a certain star dimension, creating a spatial tunnel. Cultivators could use the spatial tunnel to enter the devil world, and similarly, the otherworldly demons could use the spatial tunnel to enter the star boundary. In the firmament territory, the true law domain, the true demon domain, and other domains, there were such space passages. Among them, the true demon domain was the most eye-catching. It was said that there were a total of 2 space passages. Ziyue did not expect that there would also be one in the ancient barren region. However, what puzzled him was that the outer demons that entered the ancient barren region seemed to be much weaker than he had imagined. In the true demon domain, there were already outer demons in the middle and late gold core realm who entered the star realm. It was the same in the firmament territory and the true law domain. There were often outer demons in the gold core realm who broke through the defense barrier. However, in the ancient desolate region, the strongest expert was only at the late stage of the divine realm. How could they resist such a powerful extraterrestrial demon? Or was it that the secret cave had only appeared recently? However, it was said that this secret cave was discovered 10 years ago. It was 2 years earlier than the one in the true law domain. Ziyue could not help but feel a sense of urgency. He knew very well how terrifying the outer demons were. Tens of thousands of years ago, the ancient era's peak clans, the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan, had all declined and perished because of this extraterrestrial demon. Countless sects had completely lost their legacies because of this, and various parts of the astral realm had suffered heavy losses because of this. What about the ancient desolate region? There were no experts at all. Any divine realm extraterrestrial demon at the peak of the divine realm could probably destroy the inheritance of the cultivators in the ancient desolate region and occupy a large area, let alone an extraterrestrial demon at the gold core realm. Thinking of this, he could not care less. In a flash, he went straight in the direction of the legendary secret cave. As for Saint Master Zhenfa and the successor of a true immortal, he didn't care at all. Even if his talent was truly unparalleled, he was still only at the aperture opening realm when compared to his past self. By the time he matured, it would probably be at least 100 years later. 100 years later, even Ziyue himself wasn't sure what level he would reach. The two of them were simply not on the same level. With a thought, Ziyue's body moved like a phantom, crossing tens of thousands of miles and arriving in a desolate area. This was the Greenwood mountain range, which was not far from the original Gu God sect. By Ziyue could be considered to be revisiting an old place. His divine sense spread out in a grandiose manner. The scenery of the mountains, the maple trees, and the traces of cultivators in the area were all included in his divine sense, allowing him to understand everything clearly. Soon, Ziyue sensed the encampments of the various sects in the ancient desolate region and the mysterious secret cave. "You're finally here." However, at this moment, a slightly old voice suddenly sounded in Ziyue's ears. This voice was flat and without the slightest fluctuation, and it even seemed to be slightly indifferent and light. But when it entered into by Ziyue's ears, it was like a thunderclap that exploded to the point his heart trembled while his expression turned grim. "Who is it?" He was bewildered. His divine sense swept past, but he didn't notice anything. However, he saw a slightly stooped silver-haired old man 1,000 feet in front of him. He looked at Ziyue with a smile. His eyes were calm like the old man next door, giving people an inexplicable sense of peace. However, Ziyue looked at the other party and only felt shocked. He was an expert at the spirit-severing realm, and above the middle and late stages of the spirit-severing realm. Even though he had long known that there were still experts at the spirit-severing realm in the astral realm, and that there would definitely be experts among the 7 ancient perfected immortal experts who survived, he still felt a huge impact in his heart when he really faced him. However, although he was shocked, he quickly calmed down and asked, "May I know Senior's name? What can I do for you?" Since the other party didn't attack immediately, he naturally wanted to test the other party's strength. If he really had to fight in the end, he naturally wouldn't wait for death. "You don't have to be nervous." The silver-haired old man smiled slightly. "I am Wu Songhai of the Heavenly Radiance planet, and I call myself Immortal Songhai. 10,000 years ago, because of the supreme treasure, the primordial chaos Tao talisman, I came to your astral realm with 7 fellow cultivators. In the end, because of the treasure, we were blinded by it and a great battle broke out. Several fellow cultivators died because of this, and I was seriously injured and on the verge of death. In addition, that great battle angered the will of the great Tao of the astral realm, and heaven and earth sent down divine punishment, so I stayed here." Divine punishment? I wonder what divine punishment it is? And what is that primordial chaos Tao talisman? Ziyue raised his eyebrows and couldn't help but ask in surprise. "This divine punishment is the punishment of the will of the great Tao. You can treat it as a different kind of heavenly tribulation, but it is countless times more powerful. Among them, just to seal the heavens and extinguish the spirit is enough to make us suffer. Under the effect of the seal the heavens and extinguish the spirit chi of heaven and earth in this astral realm, it is impossible for us to absorb the wandering spirit chi of heaven and earth in this astral realm. We can only use all kinds of real heavenly treasures and swallow them into our bodies to use those spirit chi of heaven and earth to display some of our skills. Not to mention, there is also the apocalyptic divine punishment attack that occurs once every 100 years. Although the apocalyptic divine punishment is not very powerful and is only equivalent to the ultimate level of your primordial soul realm, this is actually also the limit of the great Tao of the astral realm, and the strongest it can display is only this much power. However, after all, we have experienced the ancient battle and most of us are seriously injured. It can be said that it is extremely difficult to accumulate strength. It is naturally very tiring to resist such an attack. Every time the apocalyptic divine punishment descends, it almost reduces our strength by half. It can be said that it is extremely depressing." As he spoke, Immortal Songhai could not help but reveal a trace of bitterness. These days were definitely not easy. After 10,000 years, more than 100 apocalyptic divine punishment attacks had caused him to suffer greatly. Fortunately, I am after all the best array formation master in the thousands of star regions around the heavenly radiant star, and naturally have some understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Thus, I set up this 9 revolutions isolation formation that covers the entire ancient desolate region, blocking all external enemies and protecting the survival of the human race in the ancient desolate region. The will of heaven and earth sensed this and gradually released a trace of its restrictions, allowing me to slowly absorb the spirit chi of heaven and earth to recover. Now, after nearly 10,000 years, my strength has already recovered more than 70%. As for the Chaos Tao Talisman, it is a kind of natural treasure that was born in the chaos. It appears in the form of a talisman, but it can change into thousands of forms and become an existence of any shape. It is a kind of supreme treasure that surpasses spirit treasures. It also contains the secrets of Tao integration. Obtaining it can allow cultivators like us, who have been stuck in the late stage of the spirit severing stage for countless years, to take a step further and step into the legendary realm of Tao integration with heaven. Unfortunately, that supreme treasure has disappeared without a trace after the great battle. Even the strongest sovereign celestial demon, who had reached the peak of the spirit-severing stage, and was only one step away from Tao integration, could not find it. Fairy Tsunghai shook her head and sighed. Now that she thought about it, their search back then was a joke. I see. Ziyue nodded silently, but his heart was calm. Although the primordial Chaos Tao Talisman was extremely precious and was known as a supreme treasure, he knew his own limits. He knew that even the supreme heavenly demon, who was at the peak of the spirit-severing stage, had not found it, let alone him. Not to mention that it was something that happened tens of thousands of years ago. At the same time, the other party's explanation also allowed him to understand many ancient secrets and the reason why the other party stayed. He also understood why the extraterrestrial demon in the Dragon Palace could not recover after tens of thousands of years in a place like the Dragon Palace, which was full of spirit chi. It was probably because of the effect of the astral world's will that the other party's ability to absorb the spirit chi of heaven and earth was blocked. In that case, I have to thank Senior for protecting the human race in the ancient desolate region. Soon after, Bai Ziyue said in a slightly cold tone, I know that the great battle back then ultimately caused the ancient desolate region to sink. The 7 of us have sinned greatly. Now that our strength has not recovered, staying here for tens of thousands of years is also a kind of punishment. But in that great battle, except for a few people, probably no one really wanted to fight. The astral world's will of the great Tao is not something that anyone can withstand. Immortal Tsunghai quickly explained. Then let me ask you, in the ancient desolate battlefield, in the land of the fallen immortals, was the grade 6 land of corpse nourishing array set up by you? That immortal corpse was also refined by you? Ziyue could not help but ask when he thought of the grade 6 land of corpse nourishing array that affected the entire ancient desolate region. Ever since I was injured, I have been holed up here for tens of thousands of years and have never taken a step out. But from what you said, this land of corpse nourishing array is a grade 6 land of corpse nourishing array. If I'm not wrong, it must be the work of the poison calamity demon. The poison calamity demon was the strongest existence in the array Tao after me in the great battle back then. Back then, after the great battle, he had also survived and did not die. He was one of the 4 experts that survived back then. From your description, only he, who was born in the extraterritorial demon world and was also a grade 6 array master, could set up such a great array. But I did not expect him to be so vicious as to set up the great array directly above the ancient desolate region's dragon vein. No wonder the ancient desolate region has not recovered for tens of thousands of years. It was all his doing. Otherwise, I would have recovered my strength long ago. Why would I be holed up here? At this point, immortal Songhai could not help but reveal a furious expression. Zhue saw that immortal Songhai's expression was not fake and believed him. But he asked, in the battle back then, there were 4 experts that survived? Who were they? That's right, there were 3 other people besides me. The 3 of them were the sovereign heavenly demon, the limitless sword deity, and the poison calamity demon. Among them, the sovereign heavenly demon was the strongest. He was a top demon master at the peak of the spirit-severing stage. Even the astral world's great Tao will could not do anything to him. He broke free and escaped to the extraterritorial realm. Apart from him, there was the limitless sword deity. His strength was second only to the sovereign heavenly demon. The injuries he suffered back then were also the lightest among the few of us besides the sovereign heavenly demon. But even I do not know where he is hiding. Perhaps he has already recovered his strength and escaped from the restraints of the astral world. The remaining ones are me and the poison calamity demon. He is a demon master level expert from the extraterritorial demon world. It is said that he has long had a grudge with the astral world. It is normal for him to destroy the dragon vein and set up the corpse nurturing array. But in the end, he will harm others and himself. Immortal Songhai sighed and continued, if I am not wrong, the appearance of this secret cave may have something to do with him or the sovereign heavenly demon. Because I have already spied on it. On the other side of this secret cave is the extraterritorial demon world, where the sovereign heavenly demon and the poison calamity demon are connected. But I do not know what method they use to achieve this. You are saying that all of this is man-made? A scheme by the sovereign heavenly demon and the poison calamity demon? Zhue's body shook and he hurriedly asked. Although I am not certain, I am at least 90% sure. The sovereign heavenly demon was determined to obtain the Chaos Origin Tao talisman back then. Although it was extremely difficult to overlap 2 astral realms, it wasn't impossible. The extraterritorial demon world has a deep foundation and countless experts. It is 10 times more than the astral world. Once it overlaps, it will definitely devour the entire astral world. At that time, no matter how well the Chaos Origin Tao talisman is hidden in the astral world, it will still be found by him. As he spoke, immortal Songhai could not help but reveal a trace of worry on his face. The sovereign heavenly demon was known for his ferocity and brutality. Once he broke through to the Tao integration stage, which was above the spirit-severing stage, with the help of the Chaos Origin Tao talisman, it was definitely not a good thing for the many living beings in the surrounding astral world. Even if the heavenly radiant star was also considered a large astral world, it would still be difficult to resist the invasion of the sovereign heavenly demon who had reached the Tao integration stage. Who would have thought that there would be so many secrets hidden in between? Zhue was also shocked. He had always thought that the overlapping of the astral world and the extraterritorial demon world was the normal operating law of the astral world. He had never imagined that the real reason could be traced back to the Chaos Origin Tao talisman that had appeared 10,000 years ago. However, at the same time, he also felt a strong pressure in his heart. The poison calamity demon and the sovereign heavenly demon. Of these 2, one was a late-stage primordial spirit expert, while the other was already at the peak of the primordial spirit realm. They were supreme beings who were only a step away from the primordial spirit integration stage. Once the 2 astral worlds overlapped and such experts descended upon the astral world, the scene would be akin to the end of the world. It would be a disaster for the countless living beings in the astral world and even for himself. No, I must not let such a thing happen. Thinking of the many living beings in the astral world, Fan Qingyu, Zhao Yuer, and his many relatives in the ancient desolate region, a trace of determination flashed across Zhue's eyes. He had too many ties here. Born in the astral world, he was naturally close to this world. If possible, he naturally did not want to see the astral world being devoured and his relatives and countless living beings in the astral world losing their homes. By the way, what did you mean when you said that I'm finally here? Ziyue could not help but ask again. Chapter 841. The other party's words made him feel as if he had long been anticipated. Although he knew that with the other party's strength and realm, the other party probably knew everything about his early performance in the ancient barren region like the back of his hand. However, when he thought of the secret of the attribute panel, a strong sense of vigilance instinctively flashed across his heart. Although he did not know what level of treasure the primordial Chaos Tao talisman was that made the immortals descend and fight to the death for it, he was very clear that in terms of magical value and assistance to a cultivator's cultivation, his attribute panel was definitely not inferior to the primordial Chaos Tao talisman. In fact, it was countless times more powerful. If he had been under the other party's observation long ago, then he couldn't guarantee that his secret would have been discovered by the other party. The battle 10,000 years ago really destroyed the ancient barren region too severely. All the strong cultivators were lost. Now, the strongest is only at the God realm. I'm sure you've seen the secret cavern. The reason why only Aperture Enlightening Realm extraterrestrial demons have entered now is because I have set up a defensive array. Otherwise, with the size of the connecting passage to the extraterrestrial domain, at least Golden Core Realm extraterrestrial demons would be able to use it to enter the ancient barren region. With extraterrestrial demons of such strength and an endless stream of other demonic creatures, I think you should know the fate of the ancient barren region without me telling you. At this point, Immortal Songhai paused slightly and looked at Ziyue before continuing. Although I barely managed to preserve my life because of this 9 revolutions isolation array and was able to slowly recover, most of the time, I actually have to go into hibernation to recover. However, this time, the extraterrestrial demons have merged with the star realm and are coming with great momentum. I have a hunch that in just a few years, there will be primordial soul realm cultivators entering. However, the array I have set up may be able to block Golden Core Realm extraterrestrial demons, but it definitely won't be able to block the attacks of countless primordial soul realm extraterrestrial demons. If I happen to be in hibernation and don't notice the invasion of the extraterrestrial demons, it will be a disaster for the entire ancient barren region. Senior, do you usually use hibernation to recover your strength? Ziyue's heart skipped a beat and he couldn't help but ask. That's right. Under sealed sky decimating earth, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that enveloped the entire world simply had no fate with me. I can only rely on hibernation to reduce my consumption. Then, with the help of the 9 revolutions isolation grand array, I can intercept a small amount of spiritual energy and begin to recover. Thus, under normal circumstances, I would be in a state of hibernation. It was only in recent years that I began to awaken due to the appearance of this secret cave. Speaking of which, when I woke up after 100 years of slumber, it was when you left the 100,000 mountains. However, even I did not expect that in this barren, ancient, desolate region, there would be someone as talented as you. It has only been 7 or 8 years, but your strength has already soared to the point where it has reached the middle stage of the primordial spirit realm. Even I am in awe. As Immortal Vast Sea spoke, he couldn't help but sigh emotionally. He boasted that he had seen many things and had lived for tens of thousands of years. He had definitely seen many peerless geniuses. However, there were very few who could advance as quickly as Ziyue. On the other hand, all those that could compare to Bai Ziyue were outstanding geniuses of the current generation, the Lord of a Star, or the direct descendant of an expert at the true immortal realm. They were addressed respectfully as saints and sons of the stars in the outside world. Senior, you flatter me. Everything was just luck. Ziyue shook his head and said modestly. However, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. In this way, Immortal Vast Sea obviously didn't know the secret of his attribute panel. At most, he was surprised by the rapid advancement of his strength. Senior, do you mean that you need me to guard this place and prevent the extraterrestrial demons of the primordial spirit realm from entering the ancient desolate region? Immediately after, Ziua asked again. That's right. The fusion of the extraterrestrial demon world and the star realm will cause a huge change in this world. I have to quickly accumulate strength and recover my strength to deal with the unknown calamity. Therefore, I plan to go into seclusion to recover in half a year. If you don't appear by then, I can only try my best to increase the strength of my recently accepted disciple. Although it will greatly damage his foundation and make it impossible for him to reach the spirit-severing stage in the future, it can at least delay the ancient desolate region for a few more years. I'll be doing my part. Immortal Songhai nodded and said, Senior, is your disciple the legendary sacred Lord Jinfa? Ziua's heart skipped a beat. He inexplicably thought of sacred Lord Jinfa, who claimed to be the successor of a perfected immortal. This title was indeed very famous. If he brought it to the outside world, those who didn't know would think that he was an expert at the peak of the primordial spirit realm or even the supreme realm. It's him. This disciple of mine is very talented and can be considered as one of the best in the ancient desolate region. However, his temperament and cultivation are still lacking after all. Immortal Songhai's face darkened. He was speechless about his disciple calling himself Sacred Lord Jinfa. However, he had only accepted this disciple as a backup plan. His main purpose was to guide this disciple. Therefore, he didn't pursue this matter too much. Young people should have such ambitions. Ziua smiled and took the initiative to remove himself from this matter. Although he was also young and might not even be as old as Sacred Lord Jinfa, his strength had already surpassed the younger generation by leaps and bounds. Then, he pondered for a moment and said, Senior, do you have a way to resolve this crisis once and for all? As a cultivator from the ancient desolate region, he naturally wouldn't hesitate to come and guard this place when the ancient desolate region was really facing such a great calamity. However, if it was possible, he hoped to resolve this problem once and for all. As for relying on Immortal Songhai, after all, Immortal Songhai wasn't from the astral world, nor was he a cultivator from the ancient desolate region. The reason why he had set up this formation to protect the ancient desolate region was to recover his strength. At the moment when the astral world and the extraterrestrial demon world were fusing, the world was constantly changing. Once the extraterrestrial demon world invaded too much, the astral world's seal sky decimating Earth technique wouldn't be effective against them. At that time, they might not do anything for the astral world. It would be good enough if they didn't help the sovereign demon and the poison calamity demon to attack them. Resolve this problem once and for all? Of course there are. Immortal Songhai frowned and looked at Ziua. If you want to resolve the crisis of the ancient desolate region once and for all, you have to completely destroy this secret cave. There are even some who use supreme methods to completely separate the astral world and the extraterrestrial demon world. However, even those above the Tao integration realm would find it difficult to do the latter. You and I can forget about it. As for the former, it's also extremely difficult to do. You have to know that if there's no reason, it's impossible for two worlds to be drawn close to each other. Combined with my understanding of the sovereign heavenly demon and the poison calamity heavenly demon, if my guess is correct, they must have used some method to transfer some of the origin energy of the astral boundary to the extraterritorial demon world. The opening of this space passage is actually the result of the origin source of the astral world being maintained in the extraterrestrial demon world. Therefore, if you want to completely destroy this space passage, you have to be able to directly enter the extraterrestrial demon world through this space passage and use your supreme strength to seize that origin source of the astral world. As long as the origin source of the astral world returns to the astral world and enters this space passage, the astral world's power will naturally seal this space passage completely and prevent the ancient desolate region from being invaded by the extraterrestrial demons. Enter the extraterrestrial demon world and seize the origin source of the astral world. Xiu's heart trembled. He naturally knew the difficulty of this. The extraterrestrial demon world was a world that was 10 times or even 100 times bigger than the astral world. There were so many powerful figures that it was as vast as the stars. Among them, there were more than a dozen existences above the spirit-severing realm, including the sovereign demon, who was at the peak of the spirit-severing realm and was only a step away from the Tao integration realm, who would have the strength and courage to enter another world alone and seize the origin source of the astral world. Not to mention that this spatial passageway only allowed Golden Core realm cultivators to step in. Once a cultivator of that level entered the extraterrestrial demon world, wouldn't he die without a doubt? Not to mention seizing the origin source of the astral world. That's right. The origin source of the astral world is the fundamental reason why the space passage is formed. Without the support of the origin source, no matter how close the two worlds are, it's extremely difficult to form such a stable space passage. However, even if I don't say it, you should know how dangerous the extraterrestrial demon world is. Not to mention that there are no spirit-severing realm cultivators in the astral world who can turn the tide. Even if there are, once they enter the extraterrestrial demon world, it's extremely dangerous. It's very likely that they'll be besieged and killed by the extraterrestrial demons above the spirit-severing realm in that world. In the end, the foundation of the astral world is not as strong as that of the extraterrestrial demon world. Immortal Songhai sighed and said, "The world level of the astral world was indeed far inferior to that of the extraterrestrial demon world. The strongest cultivator that could withstand it was only at the peak of the primordial soul realm. Not only was it extremely difficult to break through to the spirit-severing realm in the extreme realm, but once they broke through, they wouldn't be able to stay in the astral world for long at all. They would be driven out by the great Tao will and have no choice but to step into the endless starry sky." Tens of thousands of years ago, the astral world was actually able to withstand the long-term stay of spirit-severing realm experts. It's only because the great battle with the extraterrestrial demons that lasted for 100 years caused too much damage to the astral world that it slowly fell and only allowed the existence of the extreme realm experts. Xiue explained first, then thought of this secret cave and sighed. What a pity. Even if there really is someone who can turn the tide, so what? This space passage can only allow Golden Core realm cultivators to enter at most now. If they're stronger, they might cause the space to collapse and be killed by the power of the two worlds. Actually, with the stability of the space passage now, it's not impossible for primordial soul realm cultivators to enter the extraterrestrial demon world. I have a unique treasure called the Space Ruler. It can increase the stability of the surrounding space by 10 times. For example, in this world, an attack at the peak of the primordial soul realm can break the space and see the turbulence of the extraterrestrial star. However, if you use my Space Ruler to stabilize the space, then even extreme realm experts or early spirit-severing realm cultivators will find it difficult to break the space barrier and see the turbulence of the extraterrestrial star. Therefore, even if the space passage can only allow Golden Core realm cultivators to enter and exit, with the Space Ruler, the strength of the cultivators who enter and exit will also be greatly increased. It can allow early primordial soul realm and mid-spirit severing realm cultivators to enter and exit. Immortal Songhai explained when he heard this. Is that so? Ziyue's heart skipped a beat and he couldn't help but feel a little restless. He thought of himself. What would happen if he entered the extraterrestrial demon world? He was quite confident in his own strength. After creating the Great Tao Convergence method, he estimated that even an ordinary expert at the early stage of the spirit's severing realm would not be his match. With such strength, unless he encountered several experts at the early stage of the spirit's severing realm or directly encountered a top expert at the intermediate stage of the spirit's severing realm or above, he would definitely not fall into a situation of certain death. As for the extraterrestrial demon world, although there were many experts at the spirit's severing realm and above, correspondingly the world was also extremely vast. It was extremely rare for there to be several spirit-severing realm experts in one place. Not to mention, he also had many trump cards in his hand. If he used the time reversal and time acceleration abilities on his attribute panel properly, they would definitely increase his chances of survival by a large margin. Even if he faced a mid or late spirit-severing realm expert, it was not impossible for him to escape. Of course, the most important thing was that he thought of the amount of soul energy he needed to increase his strength. 20 billion. This number was simply too much. If he was in the astral world, he estimated that he would not be able to accumulate it even if he spent hundreds of years. After all, there were limited experts in the astral world, and there were not that many enemies around him. If he only relied on a small amount, it would naturally be incomparably slow. However, if he was in the extraterrestrial demon world, the situation would be completely different. In the extraterrestrial demon world, demonic creatures were everywhere. They were all enemies, and there were countless experts. Almost all existences in the world were his enemies. Naturally, the speed at which he obtained soul energy would soar to an unimaginable level. 20 billion soul energy was definitely not a difficult number to achieve in the extraterrestrial demon world. Thinking of this, a trace of determination appeared on his face, and he said, "Senior, can you lend me your space ruler temporarily? I plan to go to the extraterrestrial demon world and explore it." "What?" Immortal Songhai's eyes widened, and he asked in a hoarse voice, "You want to enter the extraterrestrial demon world, find the origin power of the astral world, and completely block this space passage. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.